Hey, Lele, sign for joint.
Yeah.
That's one way to do it, because then you can show how low it is. Like, pass the roach, motherfucker. Like, you know what I mean? Or the other one is joint. I don't know why that was joint before, but yeah.
Okay, he's got the video up. Sam, we can hear you on the live, not us. Okay, he's got the video up. Oh, they can hear us.
They can hear me cough.
Yeah, they can totally hear us. Sam, we can hear you on the live, not us. Okay, he's got the video up. Oh, they can hear us. Yeah, they can totally hear us. All right, everybody. Now we know you can hear us. I'm going to turn off my volume. Thank you for joining in. We're trying to figure out, we're getting the video. All right, we are on live now. All right, hello everybody. We're gonna let some of you gather, a few more of you gather. Thank you. We're getting ready to have this exciting conversation between cannabis legacy and new industry leaders. Give us just a few minutes to get all our ducks in a row technically, and we'll be starting the show. All right, is everybody unmuted?
Maybe.
All right. Okay. All right, well, let's start. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the community. And those of you joining the Humboldt Grace Community for the first time, thanks for joining us. My name is Lelania Dubois. I am the creator of Humboldt Grace and one of the 4 co-founders of the Humboldt Grace Community. I'm also your moderator for the day. Co-founder Sam De La Paz is running the show in the back, while co-founder Adelia Carrillo is moderating the questions in the community as they come in. This production has been a team effort, so please give the team big hearts where you can and say thanks. It wouldn't have happened without them. Today we're going to have a question and answer session in the last hour from 2 to 3. If you're not already, make sure you join the Facebook community. called Humboldt Grace, a cannabis community gathering place, and are viewing from there. That is where Adelia is taking questions and fielding them for us so we can engage with them as a panel. We're launching this production during a time where we're being incredibly challenged to explore the darkest parts of ourselves. We have been forced to be alone with ourselves in a way that modern society has never seen. Veils surrounding centuries of injustices are being ripped off. We're starting to rise up together globally to do the right thing. It is time for our cannabis industry to do the same. Humboldt and our outlying cannabis communities in the Emerald Triangle have a very deep history of rising up against injustices through vision, through strategy, and by building strong community. The Emerald Triangle regions are filled with generations of cannabis farmers who built strong communities under oppressive environments. We protected ourselves, we shut out the outside world, excluding ourselves from mainstream. Today, we have asked the outside world to sit down with us in hopes we can begin to heal some of the damages the drug war created and together find better solutions. We can see some of the issues around cannabis industry now, such as systemic racism and racial ignorance in our cannabis communities. Our brothers and sisters of color have had to pay the same prices, yet have lost so much more. Why are they not at the table with us today? Back in the day, our community's glue was the midwives and the homemakers. Why are women in our industry being undervalued? Patients are being left out when it is the patient that sacrificed for 215 in California in the first place. It is the patient that dies for us. In California, medical business was thriving, and now our black market is. How do we fix it? Then the legacy farmers, the ones with decades of intentionally built spoils, closets filled with hidden strains, and generations of experience around the cannabis plant. The communities that were subjected to helicopters, raids, and families broken apart are now devastated by legalization. Today, we are here to discuss how we, legacy cannabis and corporate cannabis together, can help ensure true social equity as a major part of federal policies. We're here to share and communicate based on the values of love and grace. Thank you for joining us in this mission. I want to welcome our panel. On the legacy side, you'll see Kristen Nevedal, Chair of the International Cannabis Farmers Association, Lisandro Salazar, CEO of Arcata X, and we're still waiting. Oh, and we do have Casey O'Neill, co-founder of Happy Day Farms. On the industry side, we have AC Braddock, CEO of Eden Labs, Michael Brosgart, COO of Advanced Vapor Devices, and John A. McKay of Synergistic Technologies and Associates. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Good day. Why don't we start with you, Jared and Angela? We have Jared and Angela here today with Organics. They're going to help, because we truly do want to bridge through all the divides, help us communicate to a community that hasn't had a lot of access to education on cannabis. Jared and Angela, thank you for coming. Welcome. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourselves?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having us. I'll have my wife. She says we have a deaf farm here in Southern Oregon. We've been growing or building a regenerative farm for 13 years now, and she's a third generational cannabis farmer. It's a lot of knowledge, and how within our deaf community in regenerative farming, we have to spell all the words, and that there's no actual language for the science behind it, like endocannabinoid system. That she says that's really long spelling, or endocannabinoid system, picture of how it works. You know, we meet with different people around the world, and I help interpret for us. And it's really, really hard to do all the spelling. So it's very, very important for us to be able to develop the language out there and to be able to share that so that we can share the education, and with our team and our experience and everything that we've learned, we're trying to match the meanings with the sign language and how it's represented in nature, just like endocannabinoid system, because it's connecting your system, mycelium, roots growing in the fungus, or aquaponics or hydroponics. I don't have to spell hydroponics. She says, and I'm a bad speller myself, so that doesn't help. So when it comes to language development, it helps our deaf community understand more and get them more involved in the cannabis industry. She says our deaf community is really behind, and we want to bring them together with our cannabis community and bridge that gap. We want to give our deaf community an opportunity to be able to grow or to educate themselves in cannabis or the language behind it. If you want to grow cannabis, you want to grow other things. Our deaf community, like, they can read, yeah, but it's not the same as sign. She says, so mixing the two together, it's really hard. Some people aren't very good with technology. So for a long time, we tried to add closed captioning and like voiceovers. So there's a lot of work, more work than you thought it would be, but we're excited. So we've been doing series on beekeeping as well. Chickens, rabbits, fruits and vegetables, to teach children, to be home with your family and how to be able to build values together as a community.
Thank you for being here, you guys, and helping support us reach more community with this conversation. Kristen, you're next on my screen. You want to say hello to everybody?
Sure, thank you. Hello, I'm really excited to be here. My name is Kristen Nevedal. I am a 25 plus year resident of Southern Humboldt and a longtime outdoor farmer. Spent most of my farming engaging in no-till farming. And then about 10 years ago, transitioned largely into advocacy. So I'm a co-founder and the executive director of the International Cannabis Farmers Association. We're a nonprofit organization that strives to empower traditional cannabis farmers through education, advocacy, and research. I'm also a mom of 3 college kids, and just really fell in love with the Humboldt community when I moved here over half my life ago. And advocacy has been a great opportunity for me to hopefully honor that community and help preserve it. So thanks for having us. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Kristen. Thanks for your work in the community, and thanks for being here today. Michael, you're next on my screen. Hi, thanks for coming. Oh, you got to unmute. We can't hear you.
How about that? Is that better? Sorry about that.
All right, yes.
Yeah, so thank you, Lele, for organizing this. A big thank you, to Humboldt Grace, and as well to Sam De La Paz and his team for putting together this event. And, I know how complicated these new tech things are, but it seems to be working well. So kudos to everybody. My name is Michael Brogard. I run operations at a hardware company by the name of Advanced Vapor Devices. I'm born and raised in Berkeley, California. So although I'm been labeled as kind of a newcomer to this industry, I've been around cannabis my entire life. But I'm pretty new to the legal market, and it's been quite an experience to hop on the other side and be in this space and kind of see that different juxtaposition between the two. At AVD, just to give a quick background, we exclusively design and manufacture hardware, vaporizer hardware for plant-based oils. We are very different than the other companies in this space, primarily because we're not a Chinese e-cigarette company that is trying to profit off the growth of the cannabis industry. We are a team of North American people who have been in the cannabis space for a long time, and because of that, we truly understand a lot of the different nuances of this space, but most importantly, how cannabis oil interacts with heating elements. I think that's something that is lost, with other companies that don't really understand cannabis. And part of what we're able to do to really deliver incredible products to our clients and truly be a partner for them is a couple of things. One is we control our supply chain. So our factory is U.S. owned and managed by ourselves. It's ISO 9001 and CGMP compliant. But really, what by us being out there and managing from A to Z is we can control our supply chain, and that allows us to source and only use the highest quality and safest materials available. And then what I was alluding to earlier is that we design and engineer vaporizers that provide a premium experience and really deliver flavors that are true to the strain. I think as the market moves towards more high terp extract type products, the consumers are demanding an experience and a flavor that they're used to, and that's really important to us. And then lastly, I think something that's plagued this industry for a long time are just products that are unreliable and easily leak or break, and we take a different approach. We're very stringent about our QC and our QA process, and we're really able to deliver products that work every time, and that's really important to our partners throughout the United States and Canada. And yeah, that's AVD. I'm really happy to be here, and I think we're touching on a lot of key points today that are often overlooked, and I'm just looking forward to hearing everyone's point of view and to also get questions from the audience. So thank you, Layla.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks for being here. Lisandro, you're next on my screen. Welcome, my friend.
Thanks, Lele. Yeah, I just wanted to echo kind of what Michael was saying, just acknowledging you. I've seen you do so much work behind the scenes and put together these communities, really just with the intention of just communication, I guess, in general, and kind of trying to bring up the good consciousness of this industry as it grows so fast and evolves. So I just wanted to acknowledge you there. My name is Lisandro Salazar. I am the CEO of Arcata X, which is was actually the first Type 7 extraction facility in Humboldt County. Type 7 basically means all forms of extraction from hydrocarbon all the way to any kind of manufacturing, really. So I didn't start doing that. I actually grew up in Santa Cruz, California, went to UCSC studying agroecology, restorative agriculture, sustainable design. And actually back in the recession in 2008, I had been working for a landscape architect, doing really, really well in the Bay Area. And it just ended up being that time in the economic landscape that just wasn't conducive to sustainable design in our business any longer. So long story short, I came to Humboldt, had every single job you could imagine, starting from trimmer, basically processor, to cultivator, to then designer, owner of cultivation, to designing this manufacturing facility. And now we own not only a manufacturing facility, but a distribution warehouse. We employ about 40 people locally in Humboldt County. We're really excited about bringing the world's highest quality extracts to the consumers, working with farmers to develop genetics, working with consumers to understand what they like, working with people like Mike, who has this kind of hardware that we can really pair, and then just discussing and communicating with the network at large in terms of how we can keep not only bringing financial prosperity, but also social prosperity and just more diversity to the industry at large. So thanks again, and look forward to chatting with all you guys.
Thanks, Lisandro. Hi, AC. We can see you. Can you hear us?
I can. It's all good now.
Welcome, and thank you for participating in this adventure.
It's my pleasure. So does this mean I'm on now?
You're on. It's your 1 minute, sir.
Okay. No, I'm very, very appreciative to be here. I don't think there's anything more important that the world needs right now other than community. And this community is unique and special. And the people in it, they're mission driven, and they're driven to be better business people, be better humans. And I'm thrilled to be the CEO of Eden Labs, which is a 25-year-old botanical extraction and distillation company. And Fritz Chess is the founder. He started fooling around with plants, medicinal plants, back in the early 90s, and was one of the first people to advertise an extraction apparatus in High Times back in like 1994, 1995. And I got involved at about 2009 when it became, we do all kinds of different solvents and methodologies in doing extractions. But 2009, it became very apparent to me that the industry moving forward on medical would have to have something safe to do extractions with and unquestionably safe for patients. So I heavily promoted our CO2 capabilities as well as ethanol. And we have a whole lab services part of the company that does all kinds of proof of concept for multiple different botanicals. We had a company come to us who was working with a organic farming co-op, and they needed an pesticide. And we helped them create a pesticide out of chrysanthemum flowers. And your grandmother garden, you have miracles around there to keep all the bugs out. That actually really works. We were them with that. Processing as well. We're doing Cava Cava right now and sandalwood, which I'm thrilled about. I love sandalwood. And we have a ton of education. We have been heavily involved in politics in order to move this. You have to be involved in politics, and you have to. And while some sectors of the market are fairly well in science and cannabinoid system and and there's a whole wealth of the general public who have no idea. We have still so far to go, and I think bringing this community aspect into what we do, what all of us do here, is essential. And it seems like at this point we would be getting to where we're like, oh, okay, well, we can move beyond that and get into something. We can't. It's like it's still Cannabis 101. We have to keep pushing that. And I just read some articles recently where people don't know. A lot of people don't want to know, but we have to keep getting this information in front of them, because the market needs better, more consistent product lines. And that's what Eden does.
Well, thank you for taking the time on your Sunday to spend it with us and have this conversation. We appreciate it a lot. Hi, Casey. Thanks for taking time out. How are things on the farm?
Definitely.
Say hello and introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. Things on the farm are, oh man, full steam ahead. We're doing well. We increased our food production a lot this spring to kind of try to continue to foster community in the time of COVID. And so we run a couple of farmers markets every week, small CSA program, which we've seen expand dramatically. And, CSA is essentially a box of vegetables subscription service. So we're a very highly diversified farm operation, small scale, about 1.5 acres of total cultivation, mostly vegetables. And then within that is two 5,000 square foot licenses, one at my brother's farm and one on the parcel that is partially my dad's and partially me and Amber's. So very small scale, certain amount of pastured poultry. Everything is steep slope, so it's all extra work, more or less, and focusing, on trying to figure out, I like the term striving towards regenerative. I think regenerative is kind of a term that's like perfection. It's a thing you move towards, but don't achieve. So focused on building soil, building pasture capacity, and water holding, water retention. We're up about 3,000 foot elevation, and so we're kind of up on the ridge line, and so our goal is always to store more water, sink more water, slow the water down before it leaves the parcel, and to produce as much food as we can for the community. We do very much a rapid rotation intensive methodology, and so trying to maximize what we do out of our limited space. And then over the last few years, we've done a lot of policy work, trying to sort of see that nexus of food farming and cannabis farming really come together. There's always been kind of like a false divide between the cannabis farming community and the food farming community, and we've seen a lot of those barriers really start to come down over the last few years, and an ability to talk about it. And then also a lot of trips to Sacramento, trips to Mendocino County Board of Supervisors, and just trying to communicate to policymakers what my reality looks like, so they can craft regulations that make it so it's possible for me to participate. It's like, if the way the rules are written can wipe out and has wiped out a tremendous number of operators. So that advocacy has been a big part of our sort of reality the last few years. And this spring is really the first time that I've been full-time on the farm in a long, long time. And that feels very, very good. I'm very happy to be doing that.
Well, thanks for taking time out during the busiest time for a farmer, or one of the busiest times, one of the two busiest times of the year for farmers in our industry. We just lost John Mackey. He's here too. I think, let me see if he's going to be popping back in real quick.
And while there's a second, I just would also echo the thanks and gratitude for getting everybody together. These conversations are super important, and we're all kind of trying to figure. We've never done this before, so we're all trying to figure out where the path goes and how to get there. So thanks, Layla, and big up, Sam.
Yeah, Sam is behind the scenes doing a lot of work right now, you guys. And then Adelia is going to be tuning in, or she's watching now, but she's tuning in for the Q&A session to help facilitate that. I think with a lot of people online using these resources, we can see that we're having a challenge, but all of us are in cannabis, so we're used to it. No sweat. Why don't we start, since, when John jumps back in, we do have John McKay. He does. Oh, here he is. John, would you please, while we've got you, say hello and introduce yourself?
Yes. Hello, my name's John McKay, and I have a company called Synergistic Technology Associates. And within that company, I work closely with people that are doing extraction, no matter what the solvent is, and also helping them with making sure that they're able to economically stay in business so they can provide products for the community and for medical purposes. So I'm also an adjunct professor at the University of Vermont for the College of Medicine and for School of Pharmacology for cannabis. So have a number of different videos that are. So on my side, I'm the animated part of Fritz's case with AC, and so doing a lot of the doing for a lot longer than 25 years that he's had his company, but certainly actually helping people on that side.
Thank you. Well, thank you, everybody. And thank you for those of you that are tuning in. I know we keep seeing panelists pop in and out. We're working with the new technology, and a lot of us are in remote locations, much due to our industry and our choice of lifestyle. So just have patience, and we're just going to keep navigating along. So, we brought everyone here today. As you can see from hearing these interactions, we have a unique, diverse group here to discuss. And we really wanted to show that through the diversity, we all really come to this plant. And even if we don't come to it, we end up learning from this plant, and it changes us. And we believe that that shift can help change not just our industry, but, a lot of people in cannabis believe that this plant can change the world. But in order to do that, we first have to see where we're alike, so we can have real discussions. And today we're gonna talk about, what have we learned from that plant? That's going to be our first question. Each panelist is going to answer that question. Then we're going to have a group discussion. We'll be taking some input from the community at that time. We won't be having a Q&A session. We'll then take a quick break, and then we'll dive into the second question, which is how do we impact the social equity at a policy at a federal level? And then each panelist will answer that question briefly, then we'll have a discussion, we'll have a quick break, and then we'll engage and open up with a Q&A session. So thank you for tuning in, and we shall begin. Michael, you are the first on my screen. You mentioned how you grew up in Berkeley, and you've been around the plant for a long time, but as an industry, you really just started engaging. What have you learned since that engagement? What have been some of the major lessons for you that she's taught you? I can't hear you. You're on mute, Michael.
Sorry, I said be patient. No, and all jokes aside. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a tough question because it's cannabis has taught me so much. I think throughout my entire life, I was probably a too early adopter of it. In my life, now that I look back and I have kids, and I'm like, oh, I would never want my 11-year-old kid to be smoking cannabis. But to each, it is what it is, right? And we all have our own experiences. So throughout different stages of my life, it's taught me many different things. I think primarily it's been a uniter. For me, it's always brought me together with people from all different backgrounds. I think that's one of the cool things about cannabis is you don't have to have commonalities with someone other than the fact that you both like to smoke a joint. And I think that, simple fact has just connected me and started so many cool conversations and put me in touch with people I never probably would have had conversations with. And I think it's so different from other, I don't want to use the word intoxicants, but alcohol and other type of opioids that people use. I think it has, can have the opposite effect. So, for me, it's taught me a lot. I think as I come into now, being a professional in the cannabis industry, it's interesting because you have these two sides, and you have the more traditional side, which I think still operates out of this kind of mentality of fear and secrecy. And then you have a new side of the industry coming in that's, trying to put their MBA all over it and use KPIs and metrics. And I think how those two things are coming together is just really interesting. And, I think a lot of the newcomers are just opportunistic people. But a lot of them are really awesome people who have come to admire and respect and love the plant. And I think that's super special because, what I find now is it's always, for me, it's always been more of a recreational and kind of an anxiety killer for me. So, but for a lot of people, I hear these incredible stories. Like I worked at ArcView for a couple of years and I spoke to investors all over the world. And this one common thread. I spoke to people that you would never think would be cannabis supporters. I mean, talking about right-wing people in the Midwest, and they've experienced how beneficial cannabis can be for a parent who has an ailment or a child who's battling cancer. And it's like, people, once they are able to engage with it and react with it and understand the benefits of it, they really come to love it. And I think that's part of how it unites people. So I think it's always been something that brought people together, and it continues to be. And it's such a powerful plant that we've only scratched the tip of the iceberg on what it can do. So I'm just really excited to see kind of as the industry unfolds, and I think as legalization kind of sweeps across the country and the rest of the world, kind of what all this ingenuity and innovation will bring, and how it will potentially now get integrated into a more of a truly medicinal way, and how will some of the cannabinoids be an ingredient now in a Tylenol-like substance. I mean, who knows? I think there's so much opportunity out there to use plant-based medicine. I think this is what it's teaching people. I mean, plant-based medicine has been around forever, but I think now the Western world is waking up and saying, wow, it is way more beneficial and powerful to use a plant-based medicine than to use a synthetic type of medicine. So it's taught me to be patient. It's taught me to respect everybody, to be chill, to come together. So I'm looking forward to what the next wave of cannabis is, and to see what this great these great minds who are working in it, what people will be able to do.
Thank you. Yeah, I believe it's a uniter too, and we are in fear right now, but that's why we're here, is so we can move through that fear. So Lisandro, you are next on my screen. What has this plant taught you?
So this is a great question, actually. I hadn't really thought about it, and it actually goes pretty darn deep for me personally. And honestly, I see her now more as not just a plant, right, but potentially a spirit of something bigger, it being psychoactive and so on. It's one of the master plants, right? So it's also been called the healing of the nation throughout old, reggae music, and it's kind of proving to be that. Now, for me personally, on my own path, I'll kind of start from the beginning, having been a cultivator, and starting with the seeds. To me, this is the time to be really gentle. This is where you have to be attentive. This is where you have to have faith that what you're putting your energy into is going to have something at the very end of the road, and that road could be months long. So just that initial love for what you're doing and putting that into it. Now once the plant's growing, knowing that it's a living thing and you have to nurture it every single day, and not only nurture it, but just be patient. It's not just going to give you what you want. And so that is just a lesson, I think, in just letting things unfold in their natural, time, in the natural season. Now, when it comes to taking care of the plant and pruning the plant, removing, energy that might be distracting, and then using that pruning process to then focus what you want, the energy you want to, some final goal. So that whole kind of pruning process and really just getting focused on what you want to do, I think is something that I've seen with the plant. And then of course, when, the blooming phase, and knowing that, when something's blooming, it actually needs support. The plant will fall down if you don't support it while it's blooming. And so knowing that when each of us are blooming, we need to have teams around us and support around us to kind of help that, that thing kind of get as big and as amazing as it can be. And then of course, the harvest, which is just such a humble process, because you're taking the life from this plant, and it's basically just giving something to you. And it's not only giving it to you, but it's giving it to you and the next person that uses it and all of the other people downstream. So it's just incredible to see how abundant the earth is, and this plant is, and the air is, and the water is at that moment when you're doing the harvest. I think that's extremely just gratifying and also humbling at the same time. And then, of course, you know, during the process where there's problems, and just knowing that nothing's certain, things are always changing. There's always going to be that thing that you didn't predict, and just knowing and just rolling with the punches, you know, and doing the best you can in the moment. Of course, moving into once it's harvested, and when you're trying to like cure this thing, and knowing that you have to have an environment around it to really protect the value that's there. So just knowing in our own lives, we need to set the environment around us to really, really succeed in the long run. And then, of course, in the processing, just having, you know, knowing that, you know, there's a lot of work to do, but just slow and steady wins the race. One snip at a time, right? Like we always used to say at the table, you know, just keep your fingers moving, keep it positive, and just you'll get through it at the end. And, you know, hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours at that, in that chair will teach you that aspect of just, you know, slow and steady, right? And then, of course, you know, when it comes to the sales of this plant, gosh, I mean, these are where the biggest lessons I think are learned for a lot of us. You know, it's trust is huge, right? Like, don't take risks that you're not willing to have not go your way. So just really being aware of integrity, the people you're working with, and then knowing your value, right? Not necessarily needing to sell everything all at once for some price that might not make sense to you. So knowing your value and being really firm in that, and being able to communicate that, I think, is extremely important. And then, of course, consuming it, which is a huge lesson to me almost every time I do consume it, because I never know what to expect anymore. Just knowing that there's always these subconscious things that might bubble up. It's always a work that you're doing with yourself. And, you know, sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's easy, but you're always going to keep learning more with her. And so those are some of the takeaways really that I've gotten, just, you know, really in a nutshell. But yeah, it's kind of a beautiful metaphor, really.
That was beautiful. That was so valuable. Thank you for sharing it like that with us. I really appreciated that. Hey, Casey, you are next. I can see you going, yeah, brother. Yeah, brother.
That was real. Like, you know, and breaking it down into the pieces like that was phenomenal. Thank you. Like, I definitely, like, that was like a little emotional. I really appreciated that. And, you know, to sort of, I guess, kind of to build upon, you know, for me, I think, and for so many people, you know, from the homesteaders to, you know, to folks in my generation and younger, like, I've seen cannabis, and for me, you know, be the sort of the portal back to farming, back to the land, back to the earth. And that, you know, I think when I was younger, I used to kind of envy folks who had faith, whether it was, you know, religious faith or, you know, pick up, you know, your definition of it. And it really wasn't until I became a farmer and kind of went through the various processes, you know, when you get into cannabis, if you're really thinking about kind of like sort of the darker aspects of it, there's kind of two bad things that can happen. You can get robbed or you can go to jail. And you kind of wonder, like, what am I, you know, how would I react if? And having been through both of those situations and having come out of them and felt like, okay, you know, I suppose, you know, I've tested my mettle. And again, same thing with farming. Like, farming is going to knock you down and kick the shit out of you. And are you going to get back up? And so it's been this process, you know, in which I feel like the plant has always been there for me and has always had the lessons. And I really echo what you said, Lisandro, in terms of like there was a time where it was just habit from the moment I woke up in the day all the way through, and there wasn't really a reflexiveness about it. And so now my relationship with it has changed a lot, where it's exactly what you said. We're like, I'm not sure what I'm gonna get. And there's, you know, like, there's, you know, it's the old, like, there's the both sides of the coin, the good part, and then like the dark night of the soul, hard work part. And like, both of those are necessary and important. And so sometimes it's this really like uplifting, flying on a cloud, and sometimes it's just like, whoa, I got some shit to work on. And then the final thing I've been thinking a lot about is this idea that, like, cannabis is now teaching us civics lessons. Like, I'm working on ordinances and thinking about initiatives, and we're going to the board of supervisors, and we're working on legislation, and all these things that were never part of the 10 years ago. If you just said this is what you're going to be working on in 10 years, I'm like, yeah, right. And so to just see that it provides that opportunity for growth, and I think is leading us. I think I've seen it come full circle. Like, my folks are old school, back to the landers, and so to go, from kind of fuck the system, it's broken, we're out, to all the way back around to like, well, actually, the old political saying, like, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Like, if we're not participatory, if we're not making our voices heard, it's going to happen without us. And so to see that come full circle has been, a tremendously powerful thing. And so overall, just, so many lessons, so much support, and so many teachings. I agree. The master plan idea, like, it's so powerful. And I think that cycle of good energy, and that's something we really try to focus on from, what we ended up with. We're Happy Day Farms. Grandpa always said, let us be happy in our work, and trying to put that love and good energy into the food, into the medicine, and knowing that this is going out into the world to be that support, that head change, that process for people is I call it the farmer's contract. Like, to provide nourishment and medicine to people is a deep and powerful thing, and that it all kind of, to me, adds up to this sort of ministry or calling that I feel just such a deep gratitude for.
Yeah, I feel that ministry, that calling, for sure. I believe she's a communicator of earth wisdom, plant wisdom. She's helping us communicate those wisdoms. AC, can you hear me? No. John, can you hear me? Kristen.
Oh, I can hear you now. I'm sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties, so I can only hear part of the group, and then I refresh and I get another part of the group. So
I can
you all
hear you.
me?
And I'm
I
moving
can hear
towards
you,
a place
Kristen.
that
I can
has
hear
greater,
John. John, should we wait a
Wi-Fi.
minute?
You should
All right,
probably
we
wait a
will.
minute.
You let us know
But,
when you're ready.
It'll be about 2.5
Okay,
minutes.
sounds good.
Okay.
All right, Kristen, thank you. You're up. So what has this plant taught you? I mean,
Well, it's been interesting. I became familiar with cannabis way back in high school before moving to California, and grew up in a family where my grandparents had a really large produce farm, and so I spent a lot of time on the farm. And then my dad was a very avid gardener, but very conservative family, and very Western medicine based. And my mom loved to wildcraft, kind of ironically, even though she worked for a doctor's office. And so I grew up feeling like there was a lot of separation between our well-being and nature and what nature could offer. I didn't really understand how to bridge that gap. And then I decided to study plant medicine, which is what brought me to California and to Southern Humboldt. I moved here to go to Hartwood and study Chinese medicine. And over the course of that process, cannabis became more than, largely an intoxicant. It became another tool in my toolkit of botanical medicine. And that was a really amazing growth opportunity for me to learn about it as a food and an essential fatty acid with omegas and GLAs in it, and then to learn about the medicinal effects of the plant, from moistening the intestines and the lungs to being a bronchial dilator and having all of these ways to work with it. And then coming to Humboldt was shocking. I had known about the war on drugs, but I had never really experienced it. I mean, I grew up in a very kind of upper middle class, I would say privileged household, and we were very insulated from that. And then landing here and experiencing camp, I was fully horrified. You know, Heartwood is in the middle of the Emerald Triangle. It's right kind of in the corner where Humboldt meets Trinity and Mendocino. And there's a lot of cannabis cultivation and activity there. And I showed up in August, right? And here we have camp starting to go into full swing. And I had never, I didn't know what to think. You know, I'm like,
What year was that?
cabin. This was in 95. And so I'm walking back to my cabin and I've got a convoy of law enforcement passing me on the road and I'm choking and coughing dust and there's helicopters and machine guns mounted on the helicopters and I'm getting the evil eye and I can't even put it into perspective, right? And then raising my daughter in that and my kids in that, the impacts of that, because I was farming too. And so having my little 215, I was one of those first folks in Humboldt that sent a letter to the head of the drug enforcement unit with a map to my house because I was a patient. I'm supposed to be safe to have 10 plants. And man, that first summer I did that, I got flown about 50 times. I got a helicopter landed on my driveway with law enforcement pointing at me, and I'm sitting at my house with my daughter in my arms. She is a couple years old. And I had never, I mean, for me, it was horrifying. And then it kind of woke me up to what we were doing with demonizing plants and medicines because we don't understand them or potentially someone might abuse them. And I got sparked into advocacy. I mean, I was so, I would say pretty much dismayed by it and the terror in the community. And then at the same time, I think that same terror that we experienced in the community being militarized for a couple of months every year is also what built community unlike anything I had ever experienced. So the fact that neighbors were watching out for each other, the time that, you know, I sent the letter in and had the helicopter landed on my driveway, the neighbors renegated up to my property to make sure my daughter and I were okay. I had never experienced that much willingness to support each other. You know, I grew up in the suburbs. It was very anonymous in a lot of ways. You might know your neighbor, but you weren't like, holy cow, I got a water blowout. Can I get a 3/4 inch coupler? You know, there wasn't a, hey, can we send someone to your house because there's raids happening and law enforcement is there and we want to make sure the kids are okay. Can we come get them out for you? Can we, you know, I had never been in a scenario where I knew there was a raid in someone's neighborhood, likely because all of the women and children from that area were in town, right? So for me, that was just a massive eye-opening experience about how we were really demonizing and terrorizing communities. And I can only imagine what that's been like for communities of color, right? Throughout the US, here I am, a white girl shows up in Humboldt and I'm like, whoa, my gosh. But I imagine that same terror has been felt wholeheartedly by more people than I can even imagine, right? And not just in the US, but throughout the world. And having a background in plant medicine, I don't understand how we can demonize these plants that bring so much, right? We have everything from food to fiber to medicine to spiritual opportunities with these plants. And ultimately, all of that spurred me into advocacy. And within that, I liked Casey's comment, as well as lots of other comments I've had a hard time hearing all the speakers. But Casey's comments about the civic lessons really rang true. I mean, I come from a background in Chinese medicine and herbology and acupressure. And so I didn't learn the legislative process except for, like, you know, how to be a bill on Capitol Hill and remembering that song from Schoolhouse Rock. And now I'm largely reading public policy every day and working with local legislators and electives and regulators and state legislators and electives, and knowing cannabis is a bioaccumulator, it's really taught me more about my product safety game, how to manage my farm in a healthy manner to ensure that the product that comes off the farm has the love and the intent and all of the goodness that it can hold and offer folks. And then how that is impacted all the way through the supply chain, or potentially impacted, and how we hold that product safety all the way through the supply chain. So, and within that, patience, right? We're working in public policy. There's one thing watching a plant grow, but for me, that's like the break, you know, being able to go out every morning and sit in the field and talk to everyone, right? I tend to talk to the plants and butterflies and everything out there that I experience in the morning, and doing my check-in. But the patience that comes with trying to fix the policy issues and try to help make sure that our legacy farmers and our community can continue to engage in a legal manner, that patience is pretty massive, having to build that up. That is a slow, tedious process. And I've not been known for being the most patient person in the world. So I think that's been a really major lesson. And compassion. I mean, when we're talking to folks who need this medicine, it's a little bit easier for me, coming from a wellness background, to hold compassion for those needs. But when we're standing next to and trying to have a conversation and break through opposition, people are triggered and a lot of times fearful about what cannabis might bring to their community or their home or their loved ones if they don't understand the plant. And having to slow down and practice listening and holding compassion for that fear has been a really huge lesson for me as well, that this plant has brought. So I think it's made me more patient, more consistent, and more compassionate. And those are things that I'm hoping to try to continue to evolve or build on in my life. So I'm appreciative for the plant for bringing me more of that and helping me understand the needs and the necessity of those pieces. So yeah, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Kirsten. And thank you for talking about the drug war experience from your personal perspective, because that is a very real story that aligns with a lot of what our experience is up here. Hi, John. I can see you well.
Yes, I'm in a place. I'm going to turn off my air conditioning. I'm now in my car.
Don't
outside
melt on
of what?
Don't melt on us.
Oh, don't melt. There you go. I'm melting. So I'm outside the local McDonald's stealing their Wi-Fi. This is what I do. So it may not be the greatest nutritional part, and it turns out there's no cannabis in this McDonald's that I know of. So when I'm looking at this plant, I've only been involved in cannabis since 2012. And at the time, I worked for a major corporation called Waters Corporation, which made mass spectrometers and analytical testing equipment that were or what's the government and mixture their qualitative. So because I felt that in 2012 the was going to move towards what's in the oil plants, how to know when a plant was ready. So I felt that was going to be an opportunity for Waters Corporation to buy a little bit. And in those early days, I helped with the analytical labs, CAN labs, for example, in Colorado. Some of the other ones that were out there at the time, there weren't that many. And so my career has been a PhD synthetic chemist that I thought I would teach college. And then I joined Waters Corporation with 34 years of working with analytical equipment. And through those years, it's been a number of solvents. But I came into this industry when it was young, with California, Colorado, Washington, and some of the birthing of those problems. But I'm not a creator. I'm an enhancer. And so at the time, I went out to really talk to the users of extraction equipment and what they were doing with the plant and how they were growing it. That brought me to Redding, California, and to the reality of what cannabis was at the time. And so I've been blindfolded and taken to different places, so I wouldn't know where they were. I've been able to now work closely with law enforcement on the other side of law enforcement. That's something I wasn't used to, and also being able to work through the process. So today would have been my sister's 72nd birthday. She would have been 72 today, but she died in 2002 at age 54 from epilepsy, from a grand mal seizure. She'd had them all her life. And so I had done a lot of digging with Ethan Russo and looking through all the medical parts. So my thought process within the entire scope was, how does this thing turn into a medicine? How does it turn into a safe medicine? How does it turn into something that's ethical, economical, and being able to provide, good quality products for patients? And during that time, I retired in 2017 and started my own company. And since that time, I've been able to figure out also how to lose over $250,000, because now I'm in debt. And even though I'm now incredible debt, I'm still moving through every day, learning and understanding that part of this process and part of this drive is helping people with PTSD. I'm helping people with other ailments, and so that's been my process. And the plant has now it moves me towards something called pharmacognosy. And pharmacognosy is natural medicine that products can use plants for medicine. And so for me, that's what I'm really focused on, is to be able to provide a better product. And what I do is I talk to anyone who's moving and can pop a mirror, whether it's in an elevator, a taxi, walking down the street. I'm in a store, I'm at a CVS. I will talk to anyone and ask them what their experiences are with medicine, with cannabis and CBD, and moving it towards that. So I just try and educate one person at a time, whether it's social equity or whether it's through the medicine, and getting those biases passed out. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
We'll let you stick to it. What would you say is the biggest lesson that this plant has taught you?
You can't stop stupid, but you can muffle it for a while with duct tape.
Oh, shit. That's a grower's trick.
There are many people who have no idea about the plant. They have no idea, but they've only heard things from other sources, and then they will repeat those. So whether it's a social bias, whether it's a racial bias, whether it's a plant bias, they will move towards something that they've heard. And so for me, the biggest thing I've learned on the plant is that people need to be educated, and they can be educated one at a time.
Thank you. Thank you. So it looks like we lost AC for a bit, which is a bummer, but we'll just keep on rolling. So now we have time to kind of, have a group discussion. And really what I heard a lot of you talk about is that this plant has taught you patience. It's helping you grow spiritually, emotionally, intellectually, in all different ways. And I heard tolerance in there as well. And what I hear is those are all lessons that the world really needs right now globally. Like these are teachings that we're seeing throughout that need to be supported in this conversation. And I hope to see our plant get pushed out further. Does anyone have any input before we take a break around what teachings throughout that the world need? No? All right. Well, if you guys want to, we're going to take a 5-minute. Go ahead, John. Oh, Angela.
Angela wanted to talk.
Thank you.
The plan has taught me a lot about love. That's number one. Life. Peace. It's about beautiful people together, the community and culture, and the compassion behind it. It builds community, and we share our values and our knowledge. It's about a quality of life. I see it gives a lot of people a quality of life that otherwise would be non-existent, and people that just want to be able to help our community. You know, it's not all about selling. A lot of it's giving and educating and teaching. She says, and growing. It really gives us a connection with nature and opens our eyes to nature and the possibilities and how beautiful it is. I feel at peace. And I found out how my mom and dad met. I was asking about it. And like I heard the story before, but I'd never heard the full story. And she said that her mother was at the park selling cannabis, and that's how she met her dad. She was 17 years old. I was asking about it. And says, like, that was just a really funny, cool story. Before, but I'd never heard. You know, my parents met through cannabis, and I'm a product of cannabis. So, you know, just the growing and the experience through that and how much it's affected our families, and to be able to pass on those legacies. You know, she asked me, I was watching this documentary the other day. You know, there was a old paleontologist botanist, and they were talking about and how a majority of them, they were showing pictures, all had 7-leaf. And you know how we all have endocannabinoid systems, so we all evolved from this plant. It was a food source. It was us. I mean, were we monkeys eating cannabis, and now we have conscious thought, and it's brought us together, and it's made us more analytical. I mean, one thing that it's taught me is in the cannabis industry, a lot of people they're ignorant because they think that we're stoners if we're growers and that we're lazy. But I've never met a lazy grower. I've never met a clueless grower. Like, everyone's on this pursuit of knowledge and trying to understand it, whether you're looking into mycelium or just busting out your microscope to look at dirt, or looking at the insects, or planting flowers and building the ecosystem, and just conscious thought. Everywhere you put a rock, you put thought into it. Like, what is it going to do? How is it going to look? What's it going to support? What type of nutrients is it going to be feeding it? Like, just so much into it. And it's all about life and communities. I mean, even the soil has communities. If it teaches us anything, it teaches us everything. Like, it's really opened our eyes. If you would have asked me, could you make a one world language? No. But now, working with our deaf community and seeing the need for this language in cannabis and understanding, well, yeah, it makes the impossible possible. with conscious thought, and it's beautiful. And how many people did you impact with that? I mean, 5% of the world's deaf, 15 is hard of hearing. That's 20% of the world. That's a huge impact that we as a cannabis industry can have together by educating through the development of sign language. Like, if I could give the world
Jared,
one thing.
That was beautiful. It makes the impossible possible with conscious thought. That was one of my most favorite statements I've heard in a long time. We had AC on. We just lost her. I guess I'll give my what it's taught me most, to see if she hasn't popped back on by then. You know, the plant has taught me fearlessness, I think, the most. I was a very traumatized, victimized young woman, product of the drug war. And this plant, in adulthood, I didn't use the plant as a young person. I didn't like the plant. I didn't like the experience because I was very embedded in the drug war. But when I actually started using the plant as medicine, when I got injured, it really taught me to be fearless. And that gave me lots of things. It taught me to understand myself. It taught me to appreciate and value myself, many of the things that Lisandro had mentioned. It helped me grow. It helps me grow. I don't know if it gives me patience, because it really ignites me too. It empowers me. So patience isn't the right word for what the plant does for me, but it does give me the opportunity to stop and hold space and appreciate what's going on around me. I do have great reverence and appreciation for this plant, and see it as a beautiful education tool in lots of aspects. So shucks, I'm bummed we don't have AC. Any last words from anybody before we step away from this conversation and take a quick break and come back on?
Just real quick, one of the things that just occurred to me as you were talking about this, if you said, hey, let's get a panel discussion together for Comfrey. Like, I mean, I love Comfrey. Comfrey's my friend. But I don't know that we'd get a whole panel discussion together to talk about. And so there's, you know, there's something about this plant that, like, you know, it's been a thread we've touched on a lot, how much it draws people together. And that's something I think that we all really treasure.
I think John had something to say too. John?
I think what I've seen is it's brought the young scientists together and brought a realization of pharmacognosy. So I go back to that, or ethnobotany, and it has also brought the young minds from chemical engineering and minds from botany, bringing them together to show how they can maximize a plant for different contributions, but also how to leave the plant alone and let it provide the ingredients. So, for example, Lisandro's a young person, and I'm very old. And there's people older than me that are making big contributions to how do you concentrate the components of the plant to be able to provide a specific attribute. And those attributes can also be seen in other plants also, so mixture. And whether it's going to be the counter at CVS and Walgreens, Walmart, Costco, I don't care. Or whether it's going to be behind the counter for, you know, small pharmaceuticals or other specific things. But that's where it's going to come. It's going to bring a real appreciation of black cohosh and echinacea and everything else that's out there.
Yeah, thank you, John. AC, are you on? Can you hear us? Oh, I think we don't have her. Well, why don't we're going to take a quick little break so all our panelists can get up and get something to drink. I'm going to go smoke a joint real quick. And we'll be back at, let's see, it is 1:26. We'll be back in 5 minutes. Let's say 1:30 at the latest. And we'll dive in and start talking about how can we impact social equity at a federal level? All right, and we're all gonna stay on the screen, panelists. You guys Sam is doing some stuff that we can't see, but he's got us covered, and we can just check out and be back here at 1:30.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. You might want to stay on.
Hey, bunny bear. What? You listening to me?
Am I on camera?
Mm-hmm.
Are you serious?
Put that booty on camera. No, it's right there. It's right there. Really?
I knew it. Hi, everybody. Hi,
Get in the back.
I feel like I should be sit. Can you see me?
No.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this, Lele. Goodness.
And then what we'll do at 1:30.
Lele, were you talking to me then?
Hello everyone, this is Sam De La Paz with RiseWise Growth and RiseWise Productions. Speaking for a moment on grace and what grace is to me and what Humboldt Grace means to me. Grace to me is a candor. It's an elegant, eloquent, yet confident candor.
Lele,
To me, the community...
do you know how many people are engaging or how many viewers we have, or
to
do you have any of that?
Together, even opposing ideals, opposing realities, those which
Nice.
could seem so conflicting that they would never even be able to sit down for the same conversation. But we must, we have to. This is
Nice.
personal growth. It's external growth. It's communal growth. It is moving together with a greater purpose and
Cool.
putting our feelings and emotions aside from time to time to unite and be one. Thank you.
Hi, I'm AC Braddock. I am the CEO of a 25-year-old extraction technology company who also does a lot of proof of concept and product development for natural products and some toll processing as well. The company is Eden Labs, and we have been in cannabis that whole time. I am excited to be able to sit and talk with community members and some of my peers in the industry as well in these panels. Humboldt Grace asked us to describe what we think Grace is, which is a lovely question. My immediate, what comes to mind to me is someone dancing very fluidly. I mean, to me, it is a state of fluidity, like being a river and continuing to move through, around obstacles, create new pathways, but always moving. And grace is also gratitude. Grace is holding your own and doing it in a way that is accepting and open-minded and allowing for other people's movement and fluidity. I really look forward to this event, and I thank you for attending and being a part of it.
All right, we're back on, everybody. Turn everything on. All right, we might lose them. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for our quick break, and now we're back. We do have AC Braddock, so we're just going to kind of keep flowing. And here, you know, we want to keep talking a little bit about what the plant is teaching us. And now that we've got a great picture of AC, I'd love to know, you know, AC, you have been working with this plant for a while, and a lot of other plants, but what has this experience with cannabis really taught you most?
Wow. It has taught me so much. It's but I think more than anything, from my own personal experience from being a young teenager, imbibing all the way through today, I think the most important thing that it teaches is an access to a universal mind, like with many plants and many plant medicines. And that, you know, because I'm an introvert, and having that headspace as a young person and still today to utilize that to look deeper into myself and then connect to the rest of the world and the universe itself. I mean, the plants, people, you know, everything. And to have, and I think that's one of the things that is really helping me right now, because this is such a hard time, and it's so universally just the vibes of it. You can feel the changes and the chaos and the turmoil, and to be able to think of things in a more universal way helps me a lot. Takes me out of my own worries and helps me to look at this from a macro perspective of how we're going to come out of it all, and the silver linings that are there, and the chaos and the change that happens from chaos. And it has taught me that politically, I have a voice and I can make a difference, because everybody who gets involved, who has especially been involved since, medical legalization really started happening, and they go in front of your legislators and you have local active participation, you do make a difference. And I think a lot of people in this country right now feel like they don't make a difference, that their voice doesn't matter at all. And that this cannabis has taught me that that is not true. I do have an influence. And it has taught me about social equity. I didn't know until I really started getting involved about, the details of the history, the details of prohibition, the details of the Nixon administration and the Reagan administration and the Clinton administration, and how this affected communities of color, how this affected the women's movement, how this affected discrimination, and again, politics, because this industry and its challenges are all political.
Mm-hmm.
So it has given me a voice for that, because I'm a humanitarian. I've just stopped being the chair of NCIA. It gave me a platform, and with the company with Eden, I have a platform. I can speak to this, and I speak to this for, I don't know, the last several years. I stopped talking about extraction so much, and I started talking more about social equity and how we got here and why we're here and how do we get out of it, and the science and the whole medical aspect of this plant, with our endocannabinoid system and the genetics of the plant and the genetics of the extraction process and product development, and then how that applies to people, is all one thing. And it's not true for just cannabis, it's true for all plants. And we're starting to be reintroduced to things that humans knew intuitively, where you could walk by and see a different shades of a color of a berry, and you knew that berry for that shade of color was poisonous and this one wasn't. We've lost so much. And the science of where all this is going is going to change our medical system. It's going to change our social equity. It's going to change how businesses work, because most of the businesses that I know are mission driven. It's important to them, and they talk about the science. They spend time to do the education to the consumer, because a lot of consumers aren't aware of the massive amount of benefits to this plant on every level. And the people that I have met, just intelligent, open-hearted, open-minded, down to earth, and the women. I mean, wow, the women in this industry are just amazing. I was before I got into cannabis, most of my friends were men, and I got into cannabis, and there was like all these super intelligent, feisty, down to earth women who loved to have a good time. It worked hard. And I was like, where were you all of my life until this industry? And it really started booming to have it more women in it about 2013, 2014. And that's just been a godsend to me as a CEO and as a human being too. So it's a beautiful plant. She's a wonder.
Layla, can't hear you.
Sorry, everybody. We're all so blessed to be being brought together by her, and that part of it is so needed right now. Our world is a divisive place. We have divisive leadership. The community that I come from, and some of us come from, was very isolated. So we're very myopic in a lot of ways with all our diverse ideals. And right now, we have a very large community that is impacted, has been impacted, like my community, by this plant that's fighting for their equality. We also have, as you mentioned, AC women. You know, women from this community are really strong, and it held the glue to help hold these communities together, and actually the ones that brought the plant out to the patients much of the time back in the days. You know, the farmers, we've got farmers here. We have hundreds, thousands actually, of black market farmers that are totally disenfranchised with the system, but we need for the system to work. So now I would like us all to, you know, you were sent this question of how can we help ensure that social equity is a part of federalization. You know, we've all talked about how this plant brings us together, it empowers us, it opens us up to new things. How can we push that to a bigger way? And how do you see that happening? Why don't we start with you, Casey? You're at the top of my screen.
Right. You know, I think this kind of gets at this question is, you know, it's this question in multiple forms is reverberating around the entire country right now. And, you know, I think it starts with, well, so, I mean, the fundamental answer is land redistribution and access for people who have been denied that. And so, you know, for me, like, I look at the world a lot through the lens of food justice, and like land access is food justice. So it's kind of like asking the question, like, well, what do you do at the top of the mountain when you got to start at the bottom of the mountain? So I think there's such a fundamental restructuring needed that it's hard to just pick this one specific aspect and talk about it. But in terms of, you know, from my perspective, from a small farm perspective, you know, access to capital is a big one. Access to assistance through regulatory processes, and then some form of organization that can affect those regulatory processes. And so, you know, I think that it has to start with building working models at the local level. And, you know, there's always kind of the saying that, like, a lot of politics is local. And if we can craft things that work and build models that work on a local level, we can replicate those when the larger federal conversation happens. And that's, you know, from my perspective, that's been a lot of the advocacy has been to try to connect food and cannabis and see working models developed that as regulations happen across the country, that, you know, because anytime new regulations are promulgated, they look at what's already happening. And so if we can build things that are working, then when people, you know, other legislators, other policymakers go to look at what's happening, they can see these working models. And I definitely want to, you know, big up all of the work that's been done. You know, Supernova Women, Padre Moo, Nina Parks just launched her brand, Gift of Doja. Like, you know, there's been a lot of just a tremendous, massive amount of work through the equity sessions, to try to build and figure out how to craft this. And I think that's where it really starts, is these working on the ground models that can be replicated. And I think the hard part is the organizational aspects. You know, cannabis has not tended towards political organization. It's been a hard road for us to learn how to do that. And every level, you know, at the local level, it's much less expensive than it is at the state level. At the state level, it's much less expensive than it is at the federal level. And so that's the biggest concern for me, is how do you arrive at the federal level without losing the intent of the message, because it takes so much money that only a few players are able to operate there. And that's been, just even at the state level, that's been a really, really bitter pill for me. You know, the last 6 years of advocacy and kind of riding the waves and the rise and fall of trade associations and trade association politics and all of that stuff. There's so much money involved. Lobbying is often so dirty, and we have a hard time as a community allowing for genuine differences of ideology, genuine differences of ideology become blown out of proportion. And so instead of being able to say, hey, listen, we don't have to agree on that, we can still figure out the things that we do agree on and move forward. There's been a lot of fractures and a lot of divisiveness, and at times I've participated in that. It's been a hard road. So I think, you know, we need more willingness to accept different viewpoints, regardless of whether we agree with them or not. And we need more foundational organizational work. And you know, I also see a lot of the people who become involved in advocacy burn out, and I've gone through some cycles of burnout with it, because it's kind of a black hole. It'll take as much energy as you can give to it, and still demand more. There's always more work. And so trying to sort of pace ourselves and look at this broader social change agenda, because I think that's part of what brings a lot of us to cannabis is that sort of nexus of social change, that intersectionality that occurs. And so there's such a profound conversation happening in society right now around social justice that I think there's some very fertile ground right now, but it's also daunting. You know, for me, just as a white male, like having to go through and systematically try to question and understand like my privilege and the inherent ways that I have behaviors that are engage in racism or that are unconscious and unknowing, and there's so much unpacking to do that there's a tremendous amount of work. And I think, you know, we get there by acknowledging that and just trying to put one foot in front of the other.
I like, you know, as far, we lost you, Casey.
I stopped talking.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. You know, I think you and I learned, a lot of us here learned through cannabis policy, that when you impact your local community, you can impact the greater conversation. I really like, though, and that's one of my concerns is, and we can circle back on this during the discussion, but how do we keep that integrity of that local conversation and take it to the federal level? Because we do see, we've already seen it diluted very quickly as it grows, right? And maybe that's something we can all think about is how can we do that? Michael, I mean, you're up next on my screen. Oh, go ahead, Casey. Sorry.
No, it's all good. Go ahead.
Sure.
In the United States, I'm probably the most privileged, you know, demographic in the entire world. So, you know, it's a challenge to step out from that because it's just so inherent in how you live your life that you don't understand the privileges that you might have. And if you've never been through the process of, you know, being judged or not given opportunity, I think it's really hard to truly understand what it feels like. And I think, you know, Kristen, when she was telling her story about helicopters landing on her front door, it's just really powerful because I think it you know, when you go and you experience something like that, you know, it really paints a picture of how unjust it is really for a lot of people who experience this every day. I mean, look at the stop and frisk program in New York. You know, that alone has put so many thousands of people of color behind jail for years and years and years, simply because they were stopped and frisked and they might have had, you know, a gram of cannabis on them. And like, how is that fair? So, you know, this problem is pervasive in the United States. It's more than just cannabis. You know, I read an interesting article the other day that in LA, of the 200 licensed cannabis dispensaries, only 6 of them are owned by people of color. And, that is just such a low percentage, especially if you look at the demographic mix of a place like California and Los Angeles, or if you just look at the culture that is exported from California. I mean, some of the hottest brands in the space are brands that are owned and run and managed by people of color, and they're setting the tone for what this industry is going to be like. But then again, they're not represented at the table in terms of business. So the social equity program that is happening in so many cities, I think, is a valiant effort, but I think a lot of times it falls short. I'm not an expert on them, so I don't want to go too in depth into them, but I think it is a small piece of what we can be doing. I totally agree with Casey and with Lele. Like, everything starts local, and then moves up the ladder until we get to the federal level. So I think it's incumbent on all of us to do our best in our community. And there's a couple things that I know that I can do personally as a as a participant in this industry, and also as a business owner. And a couple of the things that I personally am endeavoring to do, as well as our company, are number one is hire. We actively look to employ people that are from different backgrounds, different sexes, different genders, because I think that's really important to have everyone different viewpoints at the table. So we actively try to promote that and bring different people on, because you gotta have diversity in businesses for it to spread elsewhere. The second thing that I know I can do is to support minority-owned businesses that are in the cannabis space. Anytime I see that there's a delivery service or a brand, whatever it may be, if that's a company that is owned by a minority or person of color, I'm going to make my effort to support that, because I think that is something that we can do on a very granular level to help kind of push forward this conversation of justice and social justice and equity. Number 3 is donate. You don't have to donate just money. You can donate your time as well. Our company has in light of the protests for the murder and death of George Floyd, we've been spurred to donate a percentage of sales to a couple different organizations that are working on this such important matter. One is the Color of Change Education Fund, Minorities for Medical Marijuana, and a couple others, the ACLU. And again, it doesn't have to be just money. You can donate your time, and you can also spread the word. Number 4 is simply just to start a dialogue with whether it's your friends or other business owners, but talk about the issues. It all starts by simply just talking about it, and maybe you can change someone's mind, and that spreads to other people. And then 5 also is calling out bad actors. If you hear something that's wrong, speak up. If you see something that's wrong, speak up. And too many times in my life, I've heard people say things, and I've kind of just let them say it because they're an important business partner, and you don't want to disrupt that relationship. But that's just it's not okay. So if you hear somebody say something, call them out, and do it respectfully. There's such a charged environment in our country right now, and there's ways to go about these things and do them respectfully. So, those are kind of 5 things that I know that I can do personally, and I think everyone else can do to help spur change in this space. But part of the problem too is and it just makes me feel so horrible every time I think about this, but I can go to a dispensary and buy cannabis legally, yet there's people in my state, in my country, that are sitting in jail for the rest of their lives for the same thing that I'm literally doing, going to buy cannabis. And that is just not right. At the root of what we're doing here, and we're all free having a conversation, and there's people that are for the rest of their lives, or a year or 6 months, whatever it may be, one day is too long. We all need to join the effort for anyone that's been in jail for a non-violent cannabis offense. It's not okay. We all need to speak up. It needs to end now, and everyone needs to be released that is sitting behind bars because, for whatever reason, they were part of a non-violent cannabis offense. So once we can do that, then we can start repairing other things. But I think a lot of it starts there. Like, too many people are in jail for a cannabis offense, and it just makes me feel horrible knowing that, you know, we're having a discussion about the business of it, and we can do things and go buy it or grow it while people are still in jail. So I'm really passionate about that, and I'd like to call out the Last Prisoner Project, because they're doing so many important things to fight that fight, and big ups to Steve D'Angelo on that one.
Thanks, Michael. I think that's something that also a trauma that brings communities together, because we do have, I've been educated in the past week, and that is a whole nother culture, people of color that have been impacted. As Kristen mentioned, us as farmers, we've been severely impacted as well, yet I was always to go step in Nordstrom's and pretend I didn't have that, right? I could always hide that aspect of myself. So I think we have a lot to share and empower through that conversation with the Last Prisoner Project. Kristen, you are next on my screen. How do you see yourself, us as an industry, or our community? How can we help ensure that this plant does do the right thing at a federal level?
I mean, I'm hoping that we'll see some more sensible regulations than what we've seen in the past. As we look towards the end of the drug war wasn't just a war on the plant or people of color. It was an economic war, how it acted out and played out in our communities. And alcohol prohibition, I think, was very much the same way, right? Alcohol prohibition started largely, I think, because folks didn't understand immigrant communities and different cultures, and they also were nervous about how that might change their way of life and their lifestyle. And we saw this war on alcohol that played out and was persecuted heavily on minorities and immigrant communities. And cannabis has followed a lot of that same trajectory. I think it really has had a lot of cultural overtones and racial overtones that have been pervasive and created or been used to create fear and misunderstanding. And how the war on drugs plays out, it has really impacted these communities. And so when we look at how we move forward towards the end of prohibition, I mean, I definitely think the first thing that should happen is we definitely need to have cannabis prisoners released. I mean, this is legal in a lot of places, and in the states where it's legal, prisoners should be released from state facilities, and federally, hopefully we can get all of the federal prisoners released for nonviolent cannabis offenses, and that would be amazing. And with the programs, in order to help folks get into the legal system, I think there has to be access to capital and banking. I mean, if folks can't get small business loans to afford to participate in the system in a legal marketplace, if that's what they choose to do, I mean, first they have to be able to be involved, right? So there can't be prohibitions on cannabis felons or felonies or violations even. And so if folks want to get involved through equity programs, there's got to be pathways for them to afford it. And so that's everything from making, I think, the regulations and the ability to participate have barriers that aren't so absorbent. Like, as we ended alcohol prohibition, the regulations were so onerous, and those onerous regulations effectively keep the amount of businesses that can operate, the number of them, small, and then they're larger. And it's easier to regulate and maintain, I think, from a governmental and a bureaucratic perspective, especially when you're talking about something that is perceived as scary or potentially harmful and misunderstood. And if we take that approach with federal regulations and legalization, we aren't going to really have an opportunity to see equitable participation in a legal system going forward. So I think we have to be mindful that the regulations, the process of becoming legal has to make sense. It has to be affordable, and it has to be akin to, I would say, botanical products, right? We have an agricultural product that's produced for human consumption. We have this botanical pathway for nutraceutical products, and cannabis fits into there well. And so hopefully we can not replace real. We can ensure banking and business loans, and that folks get out of prison, and that there's equal access to enter into the marketplace. And so that's what I'm hoping to find us. And, you know, to Casey's point, examples, we're shy on those right now. Cannabis has been over-regulated, in my opinion, state to state, community to community, and that makes me nervous. But I think you're absolutely right, examples. And so working locally, how do we stand up local programs and show that the sky's not falling, right? That these are doable. We're talking about a safe medicine and product, and that we have a responsible industry. So yeah, those are some of my thoughts on it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I think what we're hearing right now is that for us in smaller communities, how our communities can impact is to get engaged locally. Is that what, am I correct in hearing that, Kristen? Is that what you're saying? Okay, I just wanted to make sure. John, you're next on my hit list over here. Okay. How do you see us as an industry impacting social equity at a federal level? And Australia.
Process. We are a country that is bound by federalism versus states, but everything is impacted by us electing someone who is representing us in the municipal, then from the municipal to the county to the state to a district, to all the way up to the Congress. And the way we did that is we had 2 senators, and we have representatives based on the population. So I'm from the state of Vermont, so you can assume that we probably don't have 17 representatives. Gut guess, we have 1, but we have 2 senators. The other process that I see is that is, as Casey says, that's the impact. The impact starts locally. The impact starts person by person. And also being an old white male, having gone through this process, and from a state like Vermont, that when we didn't know anything about discrimination, but at the same time, it's because we also didn't have the opportunity. We didn't learn Spanish when were we going to use Spanish in Vermont? You know, you learn French. So the part that I see that's most important is being impacted and making sure that you don't have something either actively or passively that denies the ability of people to have access to the business. So if you have businesses where you're not allowed to do banking, once more, you brought in people with a lot of money, and therefore they can have a bias, and therefore they drive the bias all the way through the business. If you have banking, you now have ability of having smaller shops, you have ability of starting new businesses, you have the ability of doing things like I'm trying to remember some of the products on the East Coast. The Arvint's a good example. She started a business, had all those other opportunities. She was able to start something that allowed people to do cannabis in their houses, to make their own medicines, to make their own formulations. She continues to expand all of those different processes. But you need to have more people like that on the entrepreneurial side that allows you to increase that. So it doesn't matter if it's women, Chinese, tall people, short people. It's making sure that you have all those pieces in place. So the other part is, unless there's something I don't know about, we're not going to reboot the human race. If we've rebooted the human race like we do with our computers and we wipe it all out and we start from ground zero, would we really have all these invisible borders that we call states? Would we have invisible borders that we call countries? And would we have all of the different parts coming together with different countries warring with each other? Probably, because we're humans, but at least if we rebooted and brought everyone back around saying, what would we do if we started from net zero? Is this what we would do? So to me, the number one thing is banking will allow, I gotta remember where my finger is on the banking is the number one. It allows the entrepreneur to be able to start whatever business them want to do. And then from there, you watch entrepreneurs go through and change this world. I think that's the critical part.
Yeah, we can't do much without the biggest tool in the world, right? Which is the financial part. AC, are you in a spot where you're ready to speak?
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
That was Siri.
So,
I'm not sure.
yeah. So, I don't know who that. It's not me. I don't have Siri.
It's my phone talking. It's Siri talking on my phone.
It's you.
Sorry.
Yeah. I don't allow Siri.
Well, you're gonna have to teach me how to do that. I'm just learning iPhone.
You know, everyone has said we're living at.
Is everyone else okay? I'm trying to figure it out if that's just AC's.
I think it's just these.
It's just ACs.
Yeah.
All right.
She's driving.
Let me text her. Lizandra, would you like to, while we're waiting for AC to come in better, would you like to address the subject?
There we go. Okay. Well, for me, you know, this is like the biggest question ever, you know, and I don't claim to have the answer, but I know the things that I've wrapped my brain around enough to see make a difference. So number one, I kind of just want to like break down what social equity means to me, just to make sure we're all on the same page. To me, it's social, which is, you know, we're humans, we're social. So it's talking about humans. And then equity to me is, you know, equal rights, basically. So how do we promote, you know, equal rights within this industry? Now that doesn't just apply to race, that applies to age group, that applies to, you know, sex, that applies to a lot, you know, region, a lot of different components to this whole, you know, equation. And so number one, what I always want to know is, well, what is the opinion of the stakeholders? Who's actually the people who we're speaking to, and what do they actually want for themselves, right? So not everyone wants to be a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Some people just want to have a nice life, be outside, be with their family. And so really understanding that there's not just one fundamental goal for any one person, and we can't create a policy that just makes, the financial benefits be some kind of end result, because maybe not everyone wants that. So just understanding what people really want in order to kind of bring that, what I call bottom up approach to policy, because there's the top down and there's this bottom up, right? So now what I've seen, and I was born in a different country. My father was an immigrant, and, I've been privy to, little bits of inequality here and there. And, it's just the reality of the world. And we all have to understand that, this isn't going to change overnight, right? Empowering people to be able to reach these milestones is a process. And it's not an easy process. You can't just give something to somebody and then watch, and that doesn't actually change it. You have to empower people from within. So one thing that I've seen personally is, there's certain barriers to entry in this industry. And we can speak to, maybe just the recreational cannabis industry for a minute, and then we can actually talk about the other industries that can boom with federal legalization. It's not just the flower, it's the way that it cleans up the earth, the way that it, feeds people. There's the sustainability component. There's so many parts of it. But just for now, we'll talk about recreational cannabis. Education, educating the people around you in the workplace and being competitive with wages, right? How do we as business owners create equity in our own businesses? Well, you give people abilities to grow in the company. You give them raises. You do seminars. You teach. You foster their education in maybe other ways that aren't specific to your business, but other ways that might, through an externality, help your business in the long run. So you empower them to educate themselves and to be able to create and generate this value in the form of money. You create networks, right? You introduce your people to other people. And because at the end of the day, no one's doing this on their own. If you have a one-person company right now in recreational cannabis, wow, congratulations. I don't know how you could do it. So really creating teams is how we're doing it internally. Now at the end of the day, there's lots of different ways that you can give people additional compensation. Profit sharing is one of them. There's just so many different ways that I see having been able to bring people up as I've been brought up through this industry, that I could just go on forever and ever and ever. So I don't want to bore anyone here, but I would say at the end of the day, the takeaways that I've been able to gather is, number one, knowing what social equity means to those who are potentially the minority population. Number two, doing as much as you can in the microcosm that is either your business or your network or your local jurisdiction. And then number three, making sure that when you finally brought all these concepts together, then at that final table, you have the right representation, not just trusting that because you're doing so much stuff that everyone's going to pay attention and then just do it because you've done it. But really being able to make sure that this, is brought all the way through the ranks to that final table where policy is being set, and knowing that if you set it, it's still not going to be right. You're going to have to keep changing it, keep reviewing it, keep adjusting it, and taking analytics and knowing, is this successful or is this not successful, right? So really having a process and knowing that you can't get it right the first time. You're going to have to keep iterating, keep coming back to the table. And you know what? At the end of the day, it's going to be a learning process for us, for them, for everyone, because this really hasn't been done before. And I'm super freaking excited, to be honest, about what that means for all of us in Humboldt and, the world at large. Honestly, I think it could really shift the whole planetary, consciousness, to be honest.
I have great hope for that, especially with conversations like this. We can just help open up the door and show where our head is at and our hearts are at. AC, I see you're back. Would you like to jump into this and like, how do you see us? You've really been at the table at the federal level. We've got local policymakers here and we've got federal policymakers here. How can we impact this?
There's two ways we can impact it. We have to hit on both forks, and that's personally to reach out to communities of color and find people. We can't wait for them to come to us. I mean, we have to go find them and bring them in and give them that reach out. It's a very it's grassroots, obviously, and everything everyone has said on here so far, so many good points, but also federally. And like 2018, it was women who brought the change in the House. Almost, I think it was 90 in the low 90s of women of color who voted, and women became the stronger and bigger voting bloc politically. And to make that kind of systemic changes that we need to make, we have to do it on a policy federal level, because it is so ingrained, it is so bad, obviously, that we have to find common ground with people on health and wellness and equity and social equity, to sit there, to reach across the aisle and to talk to these people who ideologically we sometimes don't have much in common with, but there are things we have in common. We're human, and those are the only two ways we're going to make a difference, and that's personally, and then getting really politically involved and making sure everybody votes, and they're voting on issues and not personalities. I think that's a really big problem currently in our politics in the last few elections, is we're not voting on issues, we're voting on personality, and we have this weird cult of personalities around presidents, when it's really their entire platform and their entire support system that we should be looking at, and what do they bring to the table other than themselves. And that's my 2 cents.
I like that. I think that's part of the value of building strong community, is you understand what other people are bringing to the table, right? And you can kind of support that. Choose where you're supporting better. So we have a couple questions. Does anyone have any feedback before we dive into the community questions around what we've all just talked about? Angela and Jared, would you guys like to jump in on this conversation? Oh, I don't know if they can hear. Angela? Well, they can jump in around the questions when Jared gets back. So one of the questions is, well, Angela, are you back? Okay, well, we'll start with the first question, because actually one of the questions is specifically something that I think Jared and Angela can speak to. But I really like this question that came through is, can the pay-to-play system ever be equitable or fair? I never heard those words before until the past couple of years, pay-to-play, and we started hearing charges of retail space and just different things. But is it ever what do you guys think about pay to play, and how do we use that system to be equitable if that's how this world chooses to work?
I don't know what pay to play means.
Who'd like to start with that?
Equitable.
Just to be in business, you got to be able to pay.
They kind of contradict each other, don't they, John? Pay to play, Lisandro, means that it's not about the value of your product. It's not about how hard you work. It's about how much money you put on the table.
So even on a speaking tour, or wanting to have something out there, there's many times that the number of expositions are based on who's ever advertising or whoever brings money to that exhibition. Not all exhibitions are like that, but many are. And so now you only get the opinion of those who paid to bring that opinion. That's not the way it works in my world of science, of American Chemical Society, or anything that that I've been associated with science. And so that's a new one, but it also doesn't bring the entrepreneurs with great new ideas to the table.
Yeah, so it's actually you're hurting us a bit in that how we expand and grow. I know with this event, I spoke to some people, and that's what they thought we were doing here. And I want to make it really clearly to everyone that every single person, every single piece of this project has been volunteer. And we really appreciate it. But we do have to find a better way to navigate. So this industry is brand new, right? How do we get that experience to the table when that experience, whether it be people of color, whether it be farmers, whether it be women, how do we get that experience to the table so this industry is built with the integrity that we all believe in?
I believe it's in the excitement of the next generation. So part of it is the older generation, but we're old and nobody's going to watch us. But at the same time, we'll watch Fritz, of course. But if you take the other people that are involved, you need to have those young scientists really coming up and understanding that they have a footprint. I try and bring as many young scientists to the table as I can possibly have on any patent I do. I throw anybody's name on a patent, anybody's name on a piece of literature that goes into a magazine or to an article or any conference. And I think that those enthusiasms, like Lisandro, those enthusiasms bring the next generation of excitement, and he will bring the next generation of excitement through the process, whether it's growers, cultivators, extractors, formulators, or marketers.
That is a very tribal way of growing, passing down the knowledge. And that's something locally that I think really hurt our policy, is that we didn't have that, because our elders, the elder community is the grassroots. They want to engage in policy. But I agree with that completely. Does anyone else want to speak on the pay-to-play aspect before we move into the next question? And Jared and Angela, that's including you too.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious to me that, number one, COVID's completely changed events for quite some time. So the pay-to-play aspect of where you pay to have a booth, you pay to whatever to have a speaking platform on a panel, for instance, which is pretty common. That's kind of going by the wayside a little bit, but there should just be discounts or no fees for people of color. They didn't like the event organizers have to make those gestures, and every single one of us needs to do that.
Yeah, that's interesting, AC, because that's a big conversation. Like I think Kristen touched on here locally, is that we have a lot of folks that should be coming through the policy process that way. I think that should be a big part of social equity. If you've been imprisoned around this plant, you should be grandfathered in some modality. Just like a war veteran, because really we keep using the terms drug war, yet we have no veteran ownership of that war, right? Maybe that's an issue. Do you have something that you wanted to say over there, Kristen?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think some of the pay-to-play components, I think, are how incredibly capitalized the system is for many people who actually want to come into a legal program. I mean, that it's hard at the cost of local permitting, the cost of state permitting, and then this product is heavily taxed in most states. Some states require you to show, a certain amount of capitalization just to qualify for an application process. These pieces are so prohibitive of most persons to participate in that until we start breaking those barriers down and or we have the ability to, like I said, have banking and or grant funding, some sort of way to really navigate that, it's hard because it's not even like just the cost of one component. Like I can't say to the state, hey, can you lower or defer or eliminate your license fee, because you've got tens of thousands of dollars to hundreds of thousands of dollars that most applicants are going to spend just on a local level, whether they're a farmer navigating environmental compliance and cleaning up legacy issues, or they're a dispensary operator who has to rent a building for a 18-month CUP process. Like those pieces are trying, and you've got families trying to put businesses together and navigate through this plan. So it's all the way through the spectrum of socioeconomic, racial, financial tensions. So I think we need some leadership to be really more mindful of that. And I think under federal legalization, we have this opportunity for the states to hopefully still run these programs, but then not feel like they have to put these layers of like, oh my God, we're working with plutonium on it to prevent from federal intervention. I think that we have a lot of this, unintended consequences rolling downhill from the federal level. And so I'm just really hoping we can break down some of those barriers. I think that's going to be crucial to creating any kind of equitable playing field here.
Well, that actually kind of helps bridge us into our next question, which is so many of us in the state, or so many of us still don't have adult use in our state. We have a strong cannabis community, nevertheless. What advice do you have for states that are still waiting in the wings for a chance? Is there anything you'd do differently if you started all over again? Kristen, you want to start? You've had a lot to do with our local and state process as far on a policy level.
Well, I'm happy to start. I mean, this is a huge question, and I think cannabis it's a medicine. It makes sense to have it be legal and have adult use, and the medical movement is really what drove cannabis forward, the science behind it, the offerings of the plant. And I think that, as AC pointed out and some other folks on the call really eloquently pointed out, making sure that we're bringing our voice to the table. So if you don't have a state pathway to a medical program or an adult use program, bringing your voice to the Capitol and to your local elected senator and assembly member, and I think is crucially important to that. If you're in a state where you don't have that access and you're looking forward to federal legalization, trying to interact in the comment periods. There have been some comment periods, and so I think it's getting engaged and staying involved. And I don't know. I can't imagine being in a state that doesn't have cannabis. I mean, it sounds really selfish. It feels selfish to say. But I know what really changed hearts and minds in other states where we didn't have programs was humanizing the use of cannabis, the need for cannabis, the medical benefits of it. And one of the things that changed the hearts and minds of legislators, more than anything, was when they had a personal experience with it, whether it was a loved one who had benefits from cannabis, or their experience with constituents that had benefits from cannabis. So I think we really have to continue to educate, help people understand the importance of it. Yeah, that's my 2 cents. I'm sorry I was long-winded.
No, I think that's really important. So Casey, we were just asked by someone, is there anything that they're actually in the state of New York, and they're asking how, they want to move forward to legalization. Is there anything that we would do differently to help them with their process? I know.
So much.
Yeah, I mean, it's been such an uphill battle the whole way. If I had to go back and do it all over again, I would. I always have felt myself to be kind of a bridge builder. But there have definitely been times when I have stood aside and seen bridges torn down, or not participated in bridge building. And if I had to go back, I would have worked much harder to accept ideological differences from people within the space and try to be able to build bridges to move forward, because we are too small and too marginalized not to be able, we need everybody on whatever the team we decided looks like and what it's going to be like. We've got to be able to figure out some basic commonalities to move the needle, because what happens a lot is, and this is kind of social movement dynamics, we let the differences within the movement shatter us at times when we've got to be strong and more united. So if I could do it again, that would be what I would do differently.
Me too.
I can speak to it a little bit as well.
Thank you, Alessandro.
So it came to me that I didn't even realize that my partner and I at one point had a business that we were bringing into the white market, and I must have just removed it out of my memory, but I totally forgot until about 2 minutes ago that it didn't even work. We completely failed, and it almost caused my partner to take his own life, to be honest, because of a few things that we didn't do in the process. Now, the first thing was proper research on what the regulations were most likely going to be. And that didn't mean hiring consultants. It actually meant knowing who the decision makers were going to be and asking them as much as possible, can you share with us what these regulations are going to look like, so we don't start making the wrong decisions early on that force us at some point either to lose all of this money that we've put into this process, or not be able to scale accordingly. And really that it was just a couple small little details within the regulations that we just didn't really look at, and we had hope but not certainty, that caused the whole thing to fall down. So I would say anyone who's trying to create a business with a state that doesn't have regulations, as much as possible, try to get your hands on some documentation so that you can see what they're proposing and see if that makes sense for you, so that you can prepare beforehand. I mean, I can't even, it was so sad just to watch just a couple small details not getting put together at the very end to watch this whole thing fall down. And honestly, after that, it would just be perseverance if it doesn't work. And if you really, really want to make it happen, just keep trying,
Thank you for sharing that, Lisandro. Good advice. I would say that's crucial to navigating this. Michael, is there anything that you have to recommend?
Yeah, I was just saying, well, I think there's a couple of things we're talking about. One is, operating within a legal state and how to, find your place in that legal state. And Layla, you and I have years of battles together now. We earned our stripes. So we've been through it, some long, protracted battles, and it's been a challenge. But I think in regards to the question, I think the original question was, what do you do in a state that doesn't have it? It just comes down to the power of the people, right? It's like, go out and canvass, get votes, put together an organization. I mean, it has to start somewhere. So if there's not an organization in your state that's fighting for legalization, start it. It can literally start with you and a couple other people, and you'll be surprised at how things grow. Go stand outside a supermarket and talk to people and get votes, and these things. That's how change happens. And you can see, case in point, what's happening today in the United States is, things are changing slowly, but changing because, the people are speaking, right? So I think it's like, we have a democracy and we have things in place that if there's enough support from the people, that things change. So, that's my only advice. And then to Lissandro's point, yeah, it's how do you operate within a legal state and start a business? I mean, it's such a challenge. There's so many roadblocks. You just have to persevere. You got.
Oh, we lost you, Michael.
Yeah, persevere, knowing the regulation.
Is that just Michael, or is that?
That's a crazy
Michael
sounding.
turned into
Sounds
Darth
like a
Vader.
robot.
Okay.
Persevere, right, Michael?
Persevere.
Okay. John, any advice for folks who are not quite in a legal state yet that you would, looking back on, would give? That you would do differently through your transition into cannabis, really, as you were learning?
The only times I've seen the system work is through the grassroots. You can go above and believe that you're going to have a forum through lobbyists, but what's going to happen is the lobbyist is only one section of the plan. It's the grocery stores, it's the CVSs, it's the elevators, it's the cabs, it's the people on the street. As you slowly bring those out and have a pamphlet that's available for someone to understand one by one, because that one person will go and reach another 4 people within an hour. They'll reach another 7 people within 3 hours. So if you give them something that's easy to read, infographic with something that says, go read these resources. Don't just believe me. I'm just someone on the street. Here's some references that you can read. And I think that those things bring the people together through the medical capabilities, and also bring them through, maybe what I heard wasn't exactly correct from Aunt Louise's friends, dentists, vets, favorite cousin.
All right, I love that. Grassroots. Casey, did we get to you on this question? Is there anything? Oh, we started with you. That's right. So Jared and Angela, we've been asked a question about the deaf community.
Okay.
And now I'm going back to it. What can we do as a cannabis community help the deaf community more around this? Because you guys are kind of these soul warriors in this conversation. How can we support you around that?
Oh, man. She says a lot of times when we go to different events, like conferences, there's
hold on.
That's why our deaf community doesn't really go. It's a waste of their time. There's $50 to $150 an hour just for interpreters, and some people don't want to pay for that. So it's hard to be able to cover that cost and not know if deaf people are going to show up. So we're very blessed to have me, because I go and I open the doors and I interpret. She says, and I see how much I missed out on. She says, now that I have somebody to help interpret, I've never had that opportunity before. And I really want to be able to change that. I want to open that door. Our deaf awareness within our cannabis industry, we want to be able to teach our deaf community about cannabis. we want to teach them how to work in the cannabis industry, teach them how to grow so that we can grow together. So anything's possible if we give it conscious thought. So I want to change that. We want to be able to make educational videos and provide them to our deaf community all over the world and continue to develop that language, because language is our foundation that we have to work through. She says, I wanted to bring something up earlier. The last prisoner project with Steve D'Angelo, talking about Craig Cecil, and how he's been in jail for 17 years. He got life for a nonviolent offense, fixing a truck that was delivering cannabis. That's all he was doing. He didn't even touch anything. He was just fixing the truck, and now he's in jail for life over that. He just got home out of jail, but he still has a life sentence to serve. So, sending letters for the Last Business Project, supporting that, getting our community out of jail. It all starts with, it's all racism. When they said all black people smoke, all Mexicans smoke, and then they turned cannabis into a tool for racism. So we really need to fight that. And seeing the stories on, you see things on Facebook on Free Craig Cecil. She's just follow that, support that, put the word out there, and then we can start making those small little changes. It's been 18, 19 years. He'll never get back. They have one life to live. So sorry, I didn't mean to go off subject, but it was something that was important to the discussion.
It's actually right on subject. It's not. That's what we're talking about. It is how do we solve those issues? How do we address those issues? So don't apologize, please.
Well, I would say this, as a group in the cannabis industry, we really do need to come together. We need to come together politically. My recommendation is that we take the Green Party back, and we are now green. We need to elect good representatives of that. My wife and I, we've been asked if we wanted to go to the White House and speak on disability access for cannabis industry and what that's like for us, because our experiences are very, very unique. Like Angela was saying, we don't have interpreters. I've sat on board of county commissioners, our cannabis advisory board, and I've actually been able to help kind of guide our local level here into legalization, within our state, and talking to senators and legislators. But the hard truth is that man from New York is that they're going to do what they want to do in the end, and that there's no such thing as recreational use. And if we can do anything, we can stop using that word. There's no such thing as recreational use. If you have an endocannabinoid system, you evolved from it. It's not recreational, it's life sustenance. So you're not supposed to be able to tax food. You're not supposed to be able to tax your medicine. Well, they are, and they call it raw. So it's taxed cannabis. That always really bothers me, because we've been in this industry now for 13 years, and we're in over 70 stores in Oregon before recreational came on board, and they made it illegal for us to do legal business as we have been doing for many years before, which makes it really hard for us to make this farm work with our deaf community, because we were doing legal business.
Jared, come closer.
Huh?
Come a little closer.
Okay. So, I mean, the laws, they made them very, very difficult. For us, we just took a tactical pause. And I advise anyone to have the state that's jumping on board patience. Patience. There's a lot of people that lost everything because they jumped on as soon as they could, thinking they were all going to get rich. And then they changed the laws every 2 weeks, and you had to be compliant or they're going to shut you down. So, patience. You know, find something that is worth investing in. Find something that has value, and put your focus into that, and figure your way as time goes on. Like, have your goal. I'm not saying don't do it. Just educate yourself. Slow and steady does win the race. You know, there's lots of different things that we need to do to help with the injustices of this industry. And right now, I think the biggest social injustice that's happening is in the banking systems, and how it's its own form of racism, and being able to hold the people that don't have the money to pay to play, or don't have the money in the bank to pay to play, allowed to play in the system. You know, why are we not represented in a legal market? Is because we're deaf and they don't interpret. They don't have access for us to get into a legal system. They make it really hard on everyone. If you were medical before, it's hard. I was watching videos through the REC, you know, REC medical licensing, and how to do metrics. And they didn't have any closed captioning. They had no interpreters. They want me to go to all these different trainings and sessions, but they don't provide me with interpreters or closed captioning or the education behind it. She says, oh, you need to find your own interpreter, but it has to be legally done. So that's not something I can technically do or anybody else can technically do. I have to go hire a professional to do it. She says, don't give me that shit. I want opportunity. Don't set me up to fail when I'm already been successful in the past.
Yeah. Great point, Angela. Really. You know, it's interesting. I was talking to one of our colleagues out there in the world about this discussion, and she brought up to me, and I was like, you know, you're so right. She's all, the drug war is a race war. You know, it's what they use to, they used racism to create illegalization. And so it is, these are all a part of all of our conversations in this industry to eliminate the drug war. We can't eliminate something if we don't deal with the root cause. So social equity is a major part, I think, of what this plant and legalization is about. We lost AC Braddock. It looks like, I'm not sure if we've lost Michael too, but does anyone have any last words that you'd like to say before we sign off?
It's been a pleasure meeting all of you and chatting. Lele, thanks again. Such cool conversations. Honestly, I think this is fundamentally something we can continue to do more and more, and engage more and more people, and, you know, just share what we've learned, and hopefully get feedback and keep that process going.
Yeah, you know, this is an intimate process. And just for all our viewers, we've done a bit of work to get to this stage of the conversation. And we really just wanted you guys to get to experience this kind of conversation. So the next time you're sitting across from a biochemist or a financier or a grower or a policymaker, that you'll open your hearts and you'll open your mind, and maybe you'll learn more, and it'll help us as a cannabis community move forward in a healthier way. Anybody else have any last words?
We just wanted to say thank you for having us. It's been an honor, and it's a privilege to be able to interpret our deaf community around the world. So, you know, if there's anything that you could ask, is just find a way to be able to support, because 20% of the world is already hearing. And like our friend Tom Sean said, you're not guaranteed to be born deaf. You have a great opportunity to go deaf later in life. So language development and sign language is really a world game changer. And this is something that we should all do in the cannabis industry and be those beautiful, bright, shining stars and those examples that our world needs.
Mm. Thank you, Jared.
Much love and appreciation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, I just want to say, first of all, thank you. Michael, you're on mute. Oh, wait, maybe I have you on mute. Hang on. What was that, Michael? You sound like Darth Vader. Okay, well, Michael doesn't get to talk.
No, we doesn't get to.
Kristen, do you have any last words you'd like to share?
Oh, it was really an honor being here and meeting all of you. Thank you so much, Lele, for hosting us and for Organic Grace. And yeah, I'm really humbling. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you for being a part of it. All right. Well, thank you everyone for being a part of this. We look forward to having more conversations like this. If you stay tuned, there's going to be a short video around all of our guests and Grace that we were trying to do at the beginning, but this was our first one. So we made some mistakes and we're going to learn a lot more for the next one. I hope you learned something, and if you learned nothing else, you've learned that we can come from opposite experiences and have really amazing conversations when we're willing to listen and open our hearts. So thank you. Thank you for being a part of this journey and being a part of Humboldt Grace. Goodbye. Thanks. All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Great success. Much love, y'all.
Mwah.
Bye, Lele.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye,
My
John.
hands on fire. But he's like, I don't know how to get off. My hand is on fire. Feels good.
It's the most complex and contentious prohibition issue in the last century. The legal wars continue to rage on, battle lines being erased and redrawn. The march toward legalization of marijuana is underway, while opponents are strengthening their resolve. But it's about more than legalization. It struggles with regulation, standardization, and the impact that this $20 billion industry will have on all of us. The voices on all sides are many, clouding the issues and twisting the truth to aid their cause. We go deep and get to the facts, presenting an agenda-free look at the issues facing our nation. Every day, a new development. Every hour, a new story. Every minute, history in the making. News, interviews, education. We are TNM News.
Hello there, and welcome to Happy Day Farms. We are a diversified small-scale farm producing food for the community and cannabis medicine to go out into the world. We do 2 farmers markets every week. We have a small CSA, and we just launched our farm stand. My name is Casey O'Neill. I co-operate Happy Day Farms with my wife and my brother and my pops. And to me, grace is about calm and poise under pressure in strange times. We are big believers in social change and social justice, and we work towards that through cannabis efforts and food sovereignty efforts. Much love and great success.
Hello everyone, this is Michael Brogart with AVD, Advanced Vapor Devices. First and foremost, I'd like to give a thank you to Lelania and her consulting firm Humboldt Grace for putting together such a great event for people to come together and discuss cannabis past and present, and how those are being bridged to really form a well-functioning, efficient cannabis industry. We've been asked to say a minute about what grace means to us, and I will talk about it in the context of business. To me, grace is treating others, of course, with compassion and respect, but understanding that businesses are in different evolution and stages of their growth, and being respectful and empathetic and understanding of that. If a company needs some advice or some help, giving that to them, working through it with them, and really being in this together. Rising tides lift all boats, and we take that very seriously at AVD. We want everyone to win, and we want everyone to play the game the right way and be respectful of past traditions and current operating environment. So with that said, I look forward to discussing this today with everyone, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ping me directly.
Love and grace are two of the most important lessons that nature teaches us. My name's Carla Avila. I'm the owner and operator of Flower Days Farm in Trinity County. Having the courage, the wisdom, and the elegance under pressure to thrive is one of the most important things that we can do in our industry to bring positive change forward. I look forward to a community discussion this weekend about the lessons that cannabis teaches of love and grace, and how we can implement those into our industry. I look forward to seeing you there.
Hi, I'm Lisandro Salazar, and I'm an owner and operator of Arcata X LLC and Lightwork Distributors LLC, which is a extraction and distribution company, altogether being Arcata X Incorporated. To me, Humboldt Grace and grace in general is something that 100% comes from within and is all around us at once. I'm filming this here at the beach because part of grace for me is doing the things that make me feel peaceful and at ease. And there's nothing better than the ocean for that. I've been in Humboldt 10 years. Been in the legal industry since it was legal. We got the first Type 7 extraction in Humboldt and have been having a blast since then, taking on the mission of making the highest quality extracts in the world and showcasing the best farms, the best farmers, the best cultivars, and the people who we believe have something to show, and that will create products and medicine that will help the world at large, and in this case, California in the short term. Thank you. I look forward to being on the panel with everybody.
coffee. My name is John McKay. I'm working with Synergistic Technologies Associates. And what I do is I specialize in small hemp and cannabis extraction facilities for being able to optimize people's productivity through disruptive technology and through Six Sigma principles and practices. And so mostly what I do is things like this to show how to use cannabis and do a lot of education. So for example, if I was to make coffee, I go to the freezer, I take out the coffee, same as I would take out hemp that was already pre-ground. I measure a certain portion of what I'm trying to make for coffee. I place it in some sort of basket, some sort of filter. I place it in a coffee maker. And then if we were doing an extraction, without even turning on the coffee maker, you can do it manually. You can take hot water and being able to fill the coffee with water, mixing it up as you do with any type of extraction. That hurt. And then after a certain amount of time, you're able to place a vessel that you would collect it in. And coffee would come out. And when you're extracting coffee, for example, you're extracting different flavors and you're extracting different compounds. One of them that people like to have is caffeine. So you'd be able to do that. Then when that part of the extraction is done, you refill it like you would CO2 or ethanol or propane, butane, tetrafluoroacid, ethyl acetate, hexane. No matter what type of solvent you're using, we're using hot water. Being able to have it sit for a while, and then again, pouring it through. So on our side, what we do is looking at education, helping everyone understand the principles and practices of high potency extraction. And my name is John McKay, Synergistic Technologies Associates. Thank you.
Hi, this is Angela. I'm Jared. No. We have a regenerative farm in Southern Oregon named Homegrown Organics.
No.
We work with our deaf and cannabis communities to develop appropriate sign language for cannabis and regenerative farming. What's grace mean to us? Royalty, strength, and the power to do what's right. A continuous life journey of protection, freedom, healing, integrity, honor, and respect. In service to others in their time of need.
The world is moving towards a shared economy, where we live, how we get places, and even the way we work. Isn't it time for cannabis too as well? Introducing My Green Network, Southern California's first truly dedicated shared manufacturing spaces. We're revolutionizing the way entrepreneurs start their journey in getting a cannabis license, making it faster, affordable, and hassle-free. So start smart. Go green the way you want.
So this is Ronzo. and I'm just showing you guys my farm this morning. And I just wanted to say that I'm truly blessed to have Humboldt Grace and Lele in my life. I feel like she has just been a true inspiration for kind and beauty and recognizing it here in Humboldt. And I really appreciate everything that she has done for our community. It's great to have somebody that inspires positive visions, and she truly does that. And this is just such a great thing to be involved with that I couldn't be happier, honestly. And I just figured I would show you this because it's better than staring at my face. I just want to mention how much I appreciate everybody in the Humboldt community, Emerald Triangle, how much love there is out there. Let's just focus on the love. Let's focus on taking care of each other. And I just also wanted to say how much I love my crew. Yeah. This is Ronzo, over and out.
1, 2, 3, 4, go, 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 go. Speed it up, go, 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 go. Speed it up, go, go, go.
This is worth the fight. Cannabis is a gentle plant medicine that has remarkable effectiveness, especially with folks who are in hospice care. So this is a battle worth waging.
Flow, 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 flow.
But for you guys that don't know, Cannabis Synergy is a platform that is for creatives, by creatives. We created this platform in order to have a space to have candid and unbiased conversations about cannabis and wellness, and as it pertains to mental health and creativity and all of that.
You are a dime, 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 dime. You're from the other side, 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 of the world.
Hi there, I'm Kristen Nevedal, and I'm a co-founder as well as the board chair for the International Cannabis Farmers Association. Our mission is to empower traditional sun-grown cannabis farmers through education, research, and advocacy. Humboldt Grace asked if I would provide a really brief statement about the meaning of the word, or my meaning of the word grace, and it's been a little bit of a hard assignment. Grace has a couple different meanings in my world. It has to do with effortless and refined motion and the beauty of that. I mean, think of ballerina dancers, or the way a bird glides through the air in a very graceful manner. But I also think that it's our ability to extend courteous goodwill and act in a compassionate manner, right? How we extend that to each other, and how we extend that as a universal energy that kind of recognizes or hears the story and recognizes the divineness in each of us, as well as the divine energy of the universe around us. So thanks for being here. I'm excited for today's conversation and want to thank Humboldt Grace for the invitation.
everybody. My name is Lalenia Dubois, and I am the creator of Humboldt Grace and one of the co-founders of the Humboldt Grace Community. Thank you for joining us. Humboldt Grace, it's a name that someone I very much love and admired created for me. He believed our community was so strong and resilient through the drug war. He saw what we had been through and felt that the way we maneuvered in focusing on sustainability and feeding ourselves and building the schools in our communities was an incredibly graceful way to navigate the drug war. And today we're coming together to help our community here in Humboldt County and our neighboring communities in Mendocino and Emerald Triangle and Sierra Nevada and all those places that have generations of farmers that have been hiding up in the hills. Today we're here to bring that experience with the mainstream new operators in our industry to help us all come together and navigate this new world with the plant's values, love and grace. So thank you for being a part of this experience, and we look forward to working through these difficult waters together.
Hello everybody, I just wanted to jump on here. I made one of my usual longer winded videos a moment ago, but I just really wanted to touch on the divisiveness in the world, and the divisiveness in our industry right now, and from every angle, the writing on the walls that I'm reading personally, and I just wanted to share those thoughts, and that is in respect to our country and the world, at the same time as it reflects deeply into our industry. divisiveness is going to get us nowhere. We may have differences. We may have differences of opinion. We have differences in experience. We have a very unique opportunity in the world right now, a very unique positioning in, you know, future industries between cannabis and hemp that can change the world, that will affect the world on a massive scale. And if we truly want to see our culture become a part of that and really have a seat at the table, we need to unify. We need to band together. We're sitting here, and I've said this from the beginning, like operators, we're rushing to the finish line. And like I said in my other video, we're really only getting to the starting line. And at this point, there's so much turmoil and distrust that has happened to us. Again, that's from years of being an oppressed culture and you know, really having to bide your time on who you could trust, how much you put yourself out there. And again, that is reminiscent of the efficiencies that we need to have within that. You know, if you didn't operate efficiently, or if you don't operate efficiently, then your stuff's not going to make it to the consumer, or you're not going to have longevity. You're going to take L's. You're going to take hits. And that's just the reality. You got to mind your P's and Q's, cross your I's and dot your T's. And at this point, I feel like it's necessary for us to unify as a voice of the culture and to really step up, step forward, take matters into our own hands, quit sitting back and waiting for anybody else to do it. And I know that it's difficult, especially with a counterculture such as ours, to get loud and get ballsy. But you know what? Especially with everything that's going on in the world right now, the state of affairs that everything's in, we need to push, and we need to push hard. We've got to be patient and compassionate toward each other, though, and remember that everybody made mistakes coming out of the gate. Everybody came out of the gate swinging. A lot of mistakes were made, but let's not hold that against each other. Let's see what people are willing to do and how they're willing to grow and move forward, because that's what really matters. That's what truly matters. And the way that we can facilitate that is with conversations like the one we're having this Sunday, and with other, you know, mechanisms like the Granges. Join your local Grange, get in there, vote, help us change policy, vote on resolutions. We've got lobbyists and legislators already positioned at the state and national levels. So let's do this, you know. No better time than the present. Hello everyone, this is Sam De La Paz with RiseWise Growth and RiseWise Productions. Speaking for a moment on grace and what grace is to me and what Humboldt Grace means to me. Grace to me is a candor. It's an elegant, eloquent, yet confident candor. To me, the community that we're building speaks volumes to compassion, to acceptance, to bringing together even opposing ideals
opposing realities, those which could seem so conflicting that they would never even be able to sit down for the same conversation. But we must, we have to. This is personal growth, it's external growth, it's communal growth. It is moving together with a greater purpose and putting our feelings and emotions aside from time to time to unite and be one. Thank you.
Hi, I'm AC Braddock. I am the CEO of a 25-year-old extraction technology company who also does a lot of proof of concept and product development for natural products and some toll processing as well. The company is Eden Labs, and we have been in cannabis that whole time. I am excited to be able to sit and talk with community members and some of my peers in the industry as well in these panels. Humboldt Grace asked us to describe what we think Grace is, which is a lovely question. My immediate, what comes to mind to me is someone dancing very fluidly. I mean, to me, it is a state of fluidity, like being a river and continuing to move through, around obstacles, create new pathways, but always moving. And grace is also gratitude. Grace is holding your own and doing it in a way that is accepting and open-minded and allowing for other people's movement and fluidity. I really look forward to this event, and I thank you for attending and being a part of it.
It's the most complex and contentious prohibition issue in the last century. The legal wars continue to rage on, battle lines being erased and redrawn. The march toward legalization of marijuana is underway, while opponents are strengthening their resolve. But it's about more than legalization. It struggles with regulation, standardization, and the impact that this $20 billion industry will have on all of us. The voices on all sides are many, clouding the issues and twisting the truth to aid their cause. We go deep and get to the facts, presenting an agenda-free look at the issues facing our nation. Every day, a new development. Every hour, a new story. Every minute, history in the making. News, interviews, education. We are TNM News.
Hello there, and welcome to Happy Day Farms. We are a diversified small-scale farm producing food for the community and cannabis medicine to go out into the world. We do 2 farmers markets every week. We have a small CSA, and we just launched our farm stand. My name is Casey O'Neill. I co-operate Happy Day Farms with my wife and my brother and my pops. And to me, grace is about calm and poise under pressure in strange times. We are big believers in social change and social justice, and we work towards that through cannabis efforts and food sovereignty efforts. Much love and great success.
Hello everyone, this is Michael Brogart with AVD, Advanced Vapor Devices. First and foremost, I'd like to give a thank you to Lelania and our consulting firm Humboldt Grace for putting together such a great event for people to come together and discuss cannabis past and present, and how those are being bridged to really form a well-functioning, efficient cannabis industry. We've been asked to say a minute about what grace means to us, and I will talk about it in the context of business. To me, grace is treating others, of course, with compassion and respect, but understanding that businesses are in different evolution and stages of their growth, and being respectful and empathetic and understanding of that. If a company needs some advice or some help, giving that to them, working through it with them, and really being in this together. Rising tides lift all boats, and we take that very seriously at AVD. We want everyone to win, and we want everyone to play the game the right way and be respectful of past traditions and current operating environment. So with that said, I look forward to discussing this today with everyone, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ping me directly.
Love and grace are two of the most important lessons that nature teaches us. My name's Carla Avila. I'm the owner and operator of Flower Days Farm in Trinity County. Having the courage, the wisdom, and the elegance under pressure to thrive is one of the most important things that we can do in our industry to bring positive change forward. I look forward to a community discussion this weekend about the lessons that cannabis teaches of love and grace, and how we can implement those into our industry. I look forward to seeing you there.
Hi, I'm Lisandro Salazar, and I'm an owner and operator of Arcata X LLC and Lightwork Distributors LLC, which is a extraction and distribution company, altogether being Arcata X Incorporated. To me, Humboldt Grace and grace in general is something that 100% comes from within and is all around us at once. I'm filming this here at the beach because part of grace for me is doing the things that make me feel peaceful and at ease. And there's nothing better than the ocean for that. I've been in Humboldt 10 years. Been in the legal industry since it was legal. We got the first Type 7 extraction in Humboldt and have been having a blast since then, taking on the mission of making the highest quality extracts in the world and showcasing the best farms, the best farmers, the best cultivars, and the people who we believe have something to show, and that will create products and medicine that will help the world at large, and in this case, California in the short term. Thank you. I look forward to being on the panel with everybody.
Malibu.
Yeah, Killer Cali, baby. Murder Valley. One time.
Most wanted in Malibu. I'm just bumping this gangsta groove. Gangsta funk got me in the mood.
Oh, hi! I was just making some coffee. My name's John McKay. I'm working with Synergistic Technologies Associates. And what I do is I specialize in small hemp and cannabis extraction facilities for being able to optimize people's productivity through disruptive technology and through Six Sigma principles and practices. And so mostly what I do is things like this to show how to use cannabis and do a lot of education. So for example, if I was to make coffee, I go to the freezer and take out the coffee, same as I would take out hemp that was already pre-ground. I measure a certain portion of what I'm trying to make for coffee. I place it in some sort of basket, some sort of filter. I place it in a coffee maker. And then if we were doing an extraction, without even turning on the coffee maker, you can do it manually. You can take hot water and being able to fill the coffee with water. Mixing it up as you do with any type of extraction. That hurt. And then after a certain amount of time, you're able to place a vessel that you would collect it in. And coffee would come out. And when you're extracting coffee, for example, you're extracting different flavors and you're extracting different compounds. One of them that people like to have is caffeine. So you'd be able to do that. Then when that part of the extraction is done, you refill it like you would CO2 or ethanol or propane, butane, tetrafluoroacid, ethyl acetate, hexane. No matter what type of solvent you're using, we're using hot water. Being able to have it sit for a while, and then again, pouring it through. So on our side, what we do is looking at education, helping everyone understand the principles and practices of high potency extraction. And my name is John McKay, Synergistic Technologies Associates. Thank you.
Hi, this is Angela. I'm Jared.
No.
We have a regenerative farm in Southern Oregon named Homegrown Organics.
No.
We work with our deaf and cannabis communities to develop appropriate sign language for cannabis and regenerative farming. What's grace mean to us? Royalty, strength, and the power to do what's right. A continuous life journey of protection, freedom, healing, integrity, honor, and respect, and service to others in their time of need.
The world is moving towards a shared economy, where we live, how we get places, and even the way we work. Isn't it time for cannabis too as well? Introducing My Green Network, Southern California's first truly dedicated shared manufacturing spaces. We're revolutionizing the way entrepreneurs start their journey in getting a cannabis license, making it faster, affordable, and hassle-free. So start smart. Go green the way you want.
So this is Ronzo, and I'm just showing you guys my farm this morning. And I just wanted to say that I'm truly blessed to have Humboldt Grace and Lele in my life. I feel like she has just been a true inspiration for kind and beauty and recognizing it here in Humboldt. And I really appreciate everything that she has done for our community. It's great to have somebody that inspires positive visions, and she truly does that. And this is just such a great thing to be involved with that I couldn't be happier, honestly. And I just figured I would show you this because it's better than staring at my face. And I just want to mention how much I appreciate everybody in the Humboldt community, Emerald Triangle, how much love there is out there. Let's just focus on the love. Let's focus on taking care of each other. And I just also wanted to say how much I love my crew. Yeah. This is Ronzo, over and out.
1, 2, 3, 4, go. 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 Speed it up. Go. 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 Speed it up. Go. Go. Go.
This is worth the fight. Cannabis is a gentle plant medicine that has remarkable effectiveness, especially with folks who are in hospice care. So this is a battle worth waging.
Flow, 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 flow.
But for you guys that don't know, Cannabis Energy is a platform that is for creatives, by creatives. We created this platform in order to have a space to have candid and unbiased conversations about cannabis and wellness, and as it pertains to mental health and creativity and all of that.
You are a dime. You're from the other side.
Hi there, I'm Kristen Nevedal, and I'm a co-founder as well as the board chair for the International Cannabis Farmers Association. Our mission is to empower traditional sun-grown cannabis farmers through education, research, and advocacy. Humboldt Grace asked if I would provide a really brief statement about the meaning of the word, or my meaning of the word grace, and it's been a little bit of a hard assignment. Grace has a couple different meanings in my world. It has to do with effortless and refined motion and the beauty of that. I mean, think of ballerina dancers, or the way a bird glides through the air in a very graceful manner. But I also think that it's our ability to extend courteous goodwill and act in a compassionate manner, right? How we extend that to each other, and how we extend that as a universal energy that kind of recognizes or hears the story and recognizes the divineness in each of us, as well as the divine energy of the universe around us. So thanks for being here. I'm excited for today's conversation and want to thank Humboldt Grace for the invitation.
All right, I think